and welcome to the American Ricci Mahjong League channel. My name is Edwin, aka 12 Sixer.
I am Tucker, aka Ennui.
And Jeremy, aka Ichiban, is working the production booth, as it were. Thank you all for coming and watching our inaugural stream where we are covering the Beta League Championship. Hopefully you'll get to see some exciting games of Mahjong. But first, a little bit of background regarding the American Ricci Mahjong League, since this is our inaugural broadcast and all. This is actually our inaugural season. I'm actually, it was actually something that I founded or thought of in 2021, mostly because myself and quite a bit of the American Ricci community had been attending tournaments across the country before the pandemic. But there was never any longer term format available to any of us. Then, of course, you had the pandemic pushing in-person groups online. You then also had the rising popularity of Ricci Mahjong through online and console games such as Mahjong Soul, Yakuza series, and Final Fantasy XIV, as well as it being Ricci Mahjong being recognized in events such as Vortex Gallery. And so I felt the opportunity was there to kind of merge the existing American Ricci community with those that had been joined during the pandemic. And so as a result, I started signups in fall of 2021, and the league started in January 2022 with 74 people strong. And this particular season is what's called a beta league, where we are dividing the 74 people into 4 different leagues in which players will compete in a format similar to that of the professional leagues in Japan, where everybody will play a roughly round robin schedule, and at the end of each season, there will be a certain percentage of people promoted and demoted between leagues. The American Ricci Mahjong League uses the World Ricci Championship, or the WRC rule set. It's played on Tenho, so there's a couple of changes to the rule set because of we are on Tenho, which include things like Kyryagi Manga, which include Kazuo Yakuman, which is a counted Yakuman, where 13 Han is equal to a Yakuman. And then other rules that we've changed because of preference within the American community, such as getting rid of a tamahane or head bump. We've also included what's called a floating uma, where instead of just a certain amount plus or minus, depending upon what place you finish in, it's also dependent upon how many players finish above and below the original starting point value. So a little bit more of the nitty-gritty there, but that's kind of what the league structure is. You can, if you're interested in participating yourself and you are a resident of the United States, you can check out our website at americanricci.org and take a look around. And if you're interested, go ahead and sign up for the spring season, which starts on April 4th. Registration for the spring season actually closes on this upcoming Monday, so not a lot of time, but if you're still interested, you can go. You still have a chance to come in and sign up. All right. With all that being said, let's go ahead and start focusing on our championship matchup, where we have the top 4 or top person in each of the four pools playing each other in a 4-game playoff to be the champion of the winter season. The champions of each of the seasons will be competing at the end of the year for the end of the year title. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at our four participants. So first one would be the champion of Pool A, Erik. He managed to finish the pool with a record of 7, 6, 6, and 1. And interesting thing between both Erik and the Pool B representative Kinyan is that you can see that their deal-in percentage is relatively low. What do you think about that, Tucker?
I think it definitely shows that those two players in particular have a more defensive play style. As someone who was in Erik's pool, as a matter of fact, for that Beta League season, I can definitely attest to that. Erik's very careful, especially once he's able to get an early lead. His path to this league championship, in fact, involved in week 4, or session 4, I should say, since the sessions are bi-weekly. Erik won all 4 of his games in session 4, had over 100-point lead on everybody else in the pool, and was able to take a much more relaxed, patient defensive stance in the 5th session. So I feel like the very low deal-in percentage is in part due to his very solid defensive play, as well as being able to take the more defensive approach in the last session as opposed to being in a more competitive pool.
Now, and that's definitely true, but it's actually that I did notice one difference though between Erik and Kinyan, is that in Kinyan's case, like her call percentage was down at the 30%, whereas Erik was definitely much more aggressive in his calling at around 40, close to 44%, which is definitely interesting considering that they both, again, had those low deal-in rates. And as you can see, that's almost representative in the fact that Kinyan also had a higher reach percentage than Erik as well. Kind of two sides of the same coin given the call percentages.
Yes, so maybe that's a good thing to look out for as well. See if in tonight's game, when Erik does call, are we seeing those calls happening in situations where he is still able to play defensively, or if it'll be more aggressive in general? This match is going to work a little differently than the games during the season, of course, since it's 4 Hanchan determines all, and really first place is all that matters, as opposed to over the course of the league, you might just take a second sometimes to avoid dropping down to 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, and something that's unfortunate that's not shown here, but we kind of have in front of us is that for Erik, not only was his deal-in percentage low, but his average deal-in amount was actually like one of the lowest I think I've ever seen in terms of an average at 2,511, where the league average is about 4,500. Whereas Kinyan, on the other hand, had it was still rather low at 3448, but if you went and look back at Erik, like even his win percent, his win values were also low. So for Kinyan, everything was a little bit more closer to average. For Erik, it seemed like he might have been more managing the game and managing the scores and keeping the variation a little bit lower.
And the lower win score does make sense with that 43.7% call rate. You can't have 3 Dora in hand every time you call if you're opening on 4/10 of all hands.
All right, so let's move on. The Pool C winner is probably somebody very familiar to those who are in the Mahjong community, in Arthur, also known as Corak. I was in the same pool as him. I actually faced him and another well-known person, Light Pink Yoshi or Max, in the same table. It was not fun, let me tell you. But Arthur managed to actually overtake Max or Light Pink Yoshi in the very last game of the beta league. He banked in such a high score that Max had to try to keep up and unfortunately was unable to. Now, Arthur's numbers are definitely interesting in the sense that his win rate is, still comparable, but his deal-in rate is actually the highest of the four. What's not shown here is that his average win amount is significantly higher, where the average was sitting around 5,100 roughly. Corak's average win value was almost 6,700, so significantly higher. And even though his deal-in rate was higher than average at 16%, his average deal-in amount was about 1,300 points less than the average. So Arthur certainly won more of the players trying to maximize their value in that sense. What do you think?
I think it's really interesting looking at those stats, just seeing that, knowing especially that Corak is such a good player and such a well-known good player, seeing that the deal-in doesn't really matter. 16% is a massive deal-in. If I dealt in 16% of the time, I'd be having heart attacks. But just the fact that he was able to maintain that, but still, even though he did not take first until the 5th session, he was in the top 3 the entire time. He very much had a dominant showing in Pool C across the board, even if he wasn't in first the entire time. So that's not just, it's not just a name, it's not just show. Those numbers mean something really important. And at the very least, like, looking at them has taught me a lot about, okay, maybe if I manage scores more than just avoiding dealing in or just trying to win hands, that's kind of the next step to what for us maybe we would call A1 Mahjong, that next level of Mahjong that I feel like I haven't quite reached yet. Like, looking at even just Corak's numbers, I feel like are incredibly illuminating.
So no surprise that Arthur, aka Corak, is here in the Beta League finals. The last person is actually somebody I had not been familiar with, but in talking with some of the other players in our league, has mentioned that they did, I believe they started playing Mahjong not that long ago, but really went all in terms of following things like Naga, which is like the bot that's on Tenho that you can actually use to analyze your games and stuff like that. And so we're talking here about Lucas, who has the remarkable record of not having a 4th place finish throughout the entire Beta League. He literally just, his score basically just increased from game 1, and he just never really relinquished the lead at all. And you can kind of see where maybe that Naga analysis comes into play, in the sense that his win rate is a ridiculously high 29.8%, which is 8 points above the league average. And his deal-in rate is pretty much league average. And even his average win and deal-in point totals or hand values are pretty much league average. So really, only thing that he's done better than the league really is just win more. That's it. And that's gotten him to a score of plus 305 in Pool D.
And the person in second, Steve, also known as Zelkin, who is, I believe, a Ho-Oh player, had 213 points. So 80 points above second place is just absolutely dominant. And it does make sense. Oh, it looks like the game is starting right as we finish talking about the stats. Although, just as we're talking about Navitas is disconnected right at the beginning of hand 1. Oh, okay, now they're in.
So looks like here that Flansou or Erik is starting off as east. Corak is sitting in south. Navitas Lucas is sitting in west, and Kinyan Yukitora is sitting in north. And it looks like both Corak and Lucas might have relatively fast hands with Yakuhai out there. Kinyan certainly has some decent shapes with the Tanyao shape. And unfortunately, I think for Erik, it's going to be a little bit slow going here. What do you think?
I agree with that. And I think Navitas as well, Lucas has a pretty good advantage having those Wests as well as having two of the Dora 8 peen. Being able to call and have value is in these games where red fives are not existent going to be a real great boon as long as they're able to keep their speed up with Corak, who has already called twice and has their hand set up very quickly for a good Honitsu over there. Oh, and there's the West.
Yeah, and Kinyan's trying to catch up as we speak.
Each.
Yeah, calls Ricci waiting on the 1 peen and the 4 peen, which is Ricci and Pinfu and Dora 1. On the 4 peen would also get Tanyao. So a sumo on the 4 peen would make that just a straight Mongon. So that's obviously what she would prefer, but we'll take any win in this first hand, I am sure. Meanwhile, Navitas Tenpai on this 6 mon and 8 peen, though it will not matter as Corak deals in with the 4 peen.
Hits the Urador for the Mongon, and so Kinyan with the early 8,000 point lead.
It'll be interesting to see how that sets the tone for the rest of the game. The 9 peen, which Lucas just drew, is the Dora this round. And it looks like Corak has a so-so hand, 3 pairs, a lot of conchons, a lot of improvement needed there. Navitas Lucas on the right, I keep saying both names, has some nice shapes, but also has a pinchon and a conchon in peen that might slow him down a little bit. Kinyan across the table has 2 completed shapes already and the pair of Chun waiting to be called. So that hand could speed up considerably if more shapes are able to be drawn. And then Erik on the left has very, very good shapes. The only real problem is the 6, 8, 9 peen, but I mean even that, if that's your worst shape, you're feeling pretty okay.
Well, Corak here has got an interesting decision here because, yeah, he's Ishan 10 for Chitoy at this point. Ooh, he draws an actual Anko. What will he decide to do? Will he continue to put? He does.
Yeah, the only issue with the Toy here is that 5 mon and the 7 mon. Those make calling for Toy a lot more difficult, even with the closed triplet of Norths at the start here. Drawing in the 8 mon and making it easier for Corak to access just kind of a normal hand is going to be a pretty big boon. And we do see the 7 mon come out and Corak not call it.
I guess if you're going to go for that type of hand, you're probably not calling, and unless you really need to. It's still relatively early in the second row.
I imagine a pawn would have been a lot more likely if the 5 mon had been the first of any of those tiles to come out. But as it is, we do have a Tenpai now. Kinyan cheated into Tenpai, right? Now waiting on the 6-0 and the 9-0.
And considering what both Erik and Lucas have discarded, those might still be able to come out, really. because you can't necessarily place Kinyan on just the Yakuhai.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of terminals and honors discarded. The chi contains all simples. So yeah, that probably looked like an all simples hand to them, which is why Navitas would have dealt into that 1,000 points. And Kinyan winning the first two hands to take an early 9,000 point lead here.
So Navitas actually here with the Yakuhai could call for just the cheap hand to continue, but on the other hand, Erik's got some other ideas pushing for Honitsu, maybe Chinitsu, especially with that 9-so call.
Yeah, is already Ishanten. I mean, pawning the 7-so or drawing a Chun or an East would instantly get him to Tenpai.
But Navitas does get the Chun, will continue to try to push the hand, try to be faster than Erik, and Erik now has lost the ability to have a little bit, another chance to get the hand quicker with that Chun being gone. But he is Tenpai waiting on just the East.
Which is a perfectly good weight. I think it's pretty obvious that he would take a so tile, since that would upgrade the hand to a full flush rather than a half flush. But an East with one already discarded is likely to be thrown away the moment anybody draws it, especially since Erik is yet to discard any peen tiles. This hand could just as easily be Toy Toy as it could be a full flush, as far as the other players are concerned.
True. I think the one hesitancy is the fact that the Sozu is the Dora suit, so you have to worry if you don't have Dora yourself, which nobody does, that Erik could be holding Dora, making that hand even more expensive.
Yeah. And that one so call definitely telegraphed things a lot more. Although Erik is still yet to draw a Pinzu. Will we see the switch to the Northway? No. Is keeping the weight basically just on the 4-so. The 1-so is technically a weight, but as we can see, all 4 of the 1-so are already integrated into Erik's hand. So
it's an interesting thing, though, because he's basically 4-so Tonki at this point. By calling the 1, it did make him Tenpai, but the ending weight isn't exactly ideal for him.
Even if he doesn't win this hand, though, you're basically freezing everyone else's hands. No one can discard a so tile. I mean, we see on the left, Corak really holding on to the 5-so. On the right, we see Kinyan holding on to the 4-so. And that 5-so draw really helped Corak out.
But the problem is that
5-so draw helped Kinyan out as well. Without that, they both probably would have just sat without getting into Tenpai. But
except that if you look back down at Lucas, he's Tenpai waiting for the 3-mon.
Which is true, but that is 2 tiles better, and there it is. He draws it.
And I think that might have been, I mean, he was fortunate not to draw any Sozu, right? Because otherwise he might have been stuck and have to work around it. But the fact that Erik ended up only waiting on just the 4-so and his weight being so thin allowed anybody who had the possibility to catch up the ability to catch up.
As long as they didn't draw any so tiles.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to take the longer way around, but yeah.
But that was a very fascinating hand to watch, and we see that Lucas here will get a repeat and has started out with a pretty interesting hand. Has the closed triplet of Norths, which is always hard to deal with. It makes it to where you cannot open your hand. Has the nice 6-7 in so, and then the 7-8-9-9 in peen, which can kind of grow in a lot of different ways, or cut the 9 peen and just leave it as the 7-8-9 shape. So he is already Ishanten as dealer. And then Kinyan on the right also has some interesting shapes, although those so tiles and the Chun are going to slow down the hand a little bit, even though the 1-so is the Dora. And across the table, Erik has also a pretty nice hand. Got a couple of Kanchan shapes that need to be improved, but otherwise the hand goes together very well, not a lot of excess. And then on the left, Corak probably has the slowest hand with a couple of pinchons and a couple of floating tiles that don't really do much.
Now, see, before when I talked about Lucas, he, like I said, he was the one that followed the Naga bot and tried to be more efficient here. It's interesting his last couple of plays here, because when he discarded that 9-pin, it was when he had drawn, I forgot which tile he had drawn necessarily, but he had drawn something that wasn't necessarily connecting, discarded the 9-pin, and then once he drew I believe it was the 3-so afterwards, then discarded the 6-mon, which then backfired with the 5. So I'm interested to see, like, I'd be interested to figure out like what the thinking was behind that, because that doesn't, to me personally, that sequence didn't necessarily seem to be efficient, but it seemed for him there must have been something he saw that maybe I'm not as familiar with.
I believe the draw was the 2-so when the 9-pin was discarded, and getting rid of the 6-mon was when the 3-so was drawn. So getting rid of the 4-6, I understand, because the 2-3 and the 6-7 are both better in complete shapes. But as for keeping the 2-so out of the 9-pin, that I cannot speak to. We do have a Ricci from Erik waiting on the 6-pin and the 9-pin. It is Ricci only, I believe. I don't see any other value there. But that early Ricci, 6th turn, still being like right at the tail end of early, take some initiative. Ooh, and then we see the 9-pin come into Lucas's hand, but
the thing is it's not coming out, because if you just look at Erik's discard pile, I mean, that there's only one Pinzu discarded prior to that point. I can't imagine anybody really discarding Pinzu there unless they have value.
Yeah, and the 1-so, I mean, all 4 Dora have already been discarded, so getting value is going to kind of be a hard rub at this point. Although Kinyan is Tempai, waiting on the 5-mon and the 8-mon. And that is Pinfu, so she can win while in Dama.
Unfortunately for her, all the 8-mons are locked out. And I think there's only one 5? Is there just one 5-mon live still?
Yes, there's one more 5-mon in the wall. And Corak, as a matter of fact, is ish on 10. Drawing anything next to the 5-mon or the 5-pin, or the West, as a matter of fact, would make Corak Tempai, though it doesn't matter.
Decide to discard the 9-pin, but it's basically minimal damage at 1,300 points, so not too big of a loss.
Yeah,
and that was probably expected from her anyways, considering that you mentioned the Dora was discarded for Ricci.
And she discarded the 9-pin when pulling in the 6-pin, so I mean, to maintain the Tempai, all she could do was deal in. Just had to choose which tile. But as you say, if you deal into a small hand, as we talked about with the stats earlier, it's not going to hurt that much. She still has a 6,000 or a 5,000 point lead, rather. 5,800 if we wanted to be exact. And speaking of Kinyan, she has a hand that could push towards Honitsu if she pulls in more Mon. At the very least, she has 2 Haku that she could call and a Dora 1-mon. On the right, Erik pulls in a 4-pin, which goes in beautifully with the Pinzu shapes. He is Ishanten now. Oh, well, maybe not. Would the 4-mon make that Ishanten? Yes, it would. Now it's a lot easier to see that he has kept to the tune as a safe tile. And then across the table, Corak, once again, doesn't have the best shapes. That hand could come to life with just a couple of draws, though, especially since he has a pair of the Dora. On the left, Kinyan has some good Mon shapes with the 2 complete Mon shapes.
That's Lucas there on the left, by the way.
Oh, I totally got everything up. That is right. Kinyan is dealer right now, and Lucas
Boom.
on the left is Ish on 10, waiting to complete either the Ryanman 6-7 so or the Ryan Khan 1-3-5 peen.
It's
My
interesting
apologies.
here. It's interesting here because going back to Kinyan's hand, she's shifted to a Honitsu shape with a fairly wide acceptance to get to Tenpai.
An acceptance that could also incorporate a straight, drawing either the 4-mon or the 5-mon and discarding the West would make that hand Haku Honitsu Itsu. And a dealer Mongon would be a very pretty hand to win right now.
Thing
Although
is that I was gonna say not everybody else is willing to discard those tiles currently. Although Lucas, in declaring Ricci, gives Kinyan the opportunity to be Tenpai.
And he called Ricci on Pinfu, and that's it. Just Pinfu, but Ricci Pinfu, hoping for some Ura to make that a little bit more valuable. Has a good weight with, well, the 2 5s and the 8 already in Kinyan's discard pile. Yeah, and Kinyan is pushing this hand as dealer with the Honitsu, with a good weight. A very reasonable push there, and does get the sumo with the 5-mon. So that is going $4,000 for the dealer Mongon.
And now approaching 50,000 points. And you can see why Lucas would make that play, because in effect, Kinyan is basically Ricci. Like, there's probably no situation in which she's abandoning that hand because of the value that she's getting from it. So if she got the 5 or the 8, so again, she would more than likely deal into Lucas. And so that probably came into his calculation of him just deciding to go ahead and declare Ricci despite what Kinyan was showing.
I do think that is an accurate analysis. And when someone just has the one call like that, there's also no guarantee that they're Tenpai. And making it harder for them to reach Tenpai is a boon for you when they are dealer and in first, and you would like to keep them from running away with things.
Now, interesting here that Kinyan decided to discard that East. Corak could have called that, but I'm guessing he's looking for value given his position at 17-5 and then last. So I'd be interesting to see how this hand plays out, as the 1-mon is again Dora, and Kinyan is holding one of those.
Although it does not currently fit into the hand, and even with a 2-mon or 3-mon draw that would connect to the Dora, it would be more efficient, technically, going paired with the 4-mon in a lot of cases. Oh, we have Erik calling the Hatsu again. We have seen Erik call a lot, as was noted beforehand, talking about that 43.7% call rate from the first 5 sessions, and that call got him into Ishanten. He has a little bit of an issue finding his pair at the moment. Most likely it's going to end up being the 5-so, but if he were to pair up, say, the 1-mon, then that obviously would change.
Now, here's the thing. If you just noticed, Kinyan had drawn the 2-mon, which connected to the 1, and you'd think she'd keep it. But I have a feeling that she might be pushing for, well, I think she's leaving the option of Chi Choi open, maybe, because there's nothing that you can do to call to open this hand, right, to make this any faster. So what else can you do with it, really?
That is a very good observation, especially since these shapes just aren't good. I mean, the best complex shape that doesn't take away from your complete shapes is the 1-2-2-so, and the Pinchan pair isn't fantastic. A pair of Norths, which is a guest wind, isn't Yakuhai. So I think what you said is entirely accurate, or at least I guess it to be. And there it is. There's a 1-so. Is now Ishanten for Chitoi.
Boom. Unfortunately, though, pays into Erik there for the 1300. The thing is, though, when it comes to Chitoi, just quickly here, being a person that ends up with it a lot more than I probably should, but do anyways, is that, you know, you don't usually want to hold those middle tiles for cheat toy because you're trying to find the pair or something like that. And more often than not, those middle tiles are being held by other people for good reason because they can easily slide into the hand. So when going for cheat toy, it is better to have more of the edge tiles. So I did think that there were certain cases in that hand that if Kinyan were really to commit to that, she probably should have discarded the 3 or the 3 and 4 pin a little bit sooner than she did, and she may have avoided then paying into Erik's hand.
One of the very few things I feel like I've learned playing mahjong is that you really have to commit to whatever you're going for, and that, using that hand as an example, kind of hedging between keeping the option open to go for cheat toy, keeping the option open to stick with a normal hand, is what ended up costing Kinyan. But it didn't really hurt her. She lost 1,300 points. She's still, what, 20,000 points in the lead? So it's not like that's going to cost her. We have some beautiful hands at the table right now, though. On the right, Corak has 3 Dora and is Ishanten. Erik, as dealer, is now Ishanten, drawing the 4 so, and has a shot at a 4-5-6 Sanshoku. On the left, Kinyan is already Tempai, waiting on the 5
and wins the hand.
There's that 1,000 points back.
Wow, that was rather quick, and unfortunately denies Corak the value that he was trying to get out of that hand to get back into the game here.
And this hand, Corak, other than an ugly pile of honors, all of his shapes in the suits look very good, especially with that 1 peen draw to finish off the 1, 2, 3, leaving the 3 peen, which can accept the Dora 5 peen, to hopefully grow into another shape. On the right, Lucas has the pair of Haku that could be called when either Kinyan or Corak drop theirs. Although outside of that, the shapes aren't fantastic. A couple of Kanchans and a Pinchan that look to be rather slow. Meanwhile, Kinyan also has a lot of Kanchans. That 5 mon was definitely a plus, but has a pretty slow hand. On the left, Erik has just called Khan on the 3, so is Ishanten. Can pull in the 4 peen, the 7 peen, the 1 so, or the 6 so to get there. I do wonder, do you have any intuition as to why the Khan was called?
Probably for value, my guess is, because again, even though this is a 4-game set and this is still early, this is probably a chance for Erik to get some points back here with the con. The fact that he was so close to Tempai at that point, and then gotten to Ricci the next turn after, probably he figured that he would be able to finish his hand faster than anybody else.
And I especially like that his weight ended up including the 1 so, as the con of 3 so, the Kabe, the wall formed there, made the 1 so hard for anybody else to integrate into their hands. And he did end up winning a Mongon on it, which pretty handily puts him in second, and is almost within striking distance of Kinyan. Will only really be able to capitalize with that on 1 win if it's a direct Mongon hit on her, or a Mongon sumo when she is dealer and all last, but is set up to try and make a run at first here in the last 2 hands. Lucas starting off here with some very nice shapes and some very bad shapes. That hand is just going to we're just going to have to see how it grows. Yep, there's the 4 mon. He is now ish on 10, but is kind of relying on the 7-9 Kanchan and the 8-9 Pinchan, which are slower shapes. I'm sure he's hoping to improve those. Kinyan on the right also has an 8-9 in hand, but does not have as many complete shapes outside, although has some nice complex shapes that could grow quickly. Across the table, Erik has just a bunch of nonsense. I don't feel like Erik's hand is going to grow very quickly at all unless he's just able to pull in all of the so tiles in the world. And then on the left, Corak, how did that 6-peen change things? He could call the Haku for Tempai. I don't know whether he'd want to, though, because that hand would have no value. And being in last place, again, the last place is not vastly important in this case, other than it just puts you behind for those final 3 games. And I know a rule change was made for next season with the UMA. How is UMA going to work in these games? Will it be the UMA from the past season? Or
Yeah,
is
no,
it the UMA for the coming?
the change in the UMA structure is going to happen the following seasons. We can get into that later, once in between games here. I think probably what Corak was thinking was, because he's always looking for value, was to try to find a way to maybe turn this into some type of Honitsu shape or some sort. But unfortunately, he's gotten cut off by Kinyan, who somehow, despite the bad shapes, has managed to get into a really great tempai waiting for 3-6 so.
Yeah, for the Ricci Penfu. Ooh, and there's another 6-0 coming into Lucas's hand, although it can be used as the pair or for a Shanpon wait if the 4-peen is drawn.
But yeah, my guess is that he was, even though he had discarded the 9-pin early for Corak, he might have been trying to find value where he could, just trying to catch up. But yeah, Kinyan manages to make the best use of the hand, wins what I always call the sad 4-han hand, because it's the one 4-han hand that's not a Mongon. But regardless, still extends the lead going into her final dealership and the last dealership of the first game.
And with a 17,700 point lead, I mean, it would require a Hanuman Sumo from Erik to overtake, which is absolutely possible, but that is made a lot harder with the North being Dora for the second hand in a row. Corak, on the other hand, does have 2 of them.
Yeah, and with a Mongon Sumo of his own, or even a direct hit less than that off of Lucas, he can actually take over a third. And I think at this point, that's probably what he's going to try to put his focus on, is just trying to get out of last place, avoid the minus 15 as it stands right now, and to put himself in a better position for the final 3 games. Kinyan doesn't really care about her dealership because she can just, I mean, she cares in the sense that she doesn't want Erik to come back and possibly overtake her with some type of big hand. But realistically, she could just easily pay into some, 1,000 point hand and be done with this game.
Yeah, that would not really hurt her at all. And just for those who maybe are unaware of the UMA being used for this game, if 2 people are above the starting value of 30,000 and 2 people are below, then the UMA will be split plus 15, plus 5, minus 5, minus 15 for first through fourth place respectively. And then if 3 of the 4 people are above 30K, then the values on the upper end get decreased. So first place gets 9, second place gets 5, and third place gets 1, while fourth place still gets minus 15. If 3 people are below 30K, then first place still gets 15 UMA, while second gets -1, third gets -9, or -5, and fourth gets -9. We do have a Ricci from Lucas here, which I guess is mostly to prevent Corak from catching up. Waiting on the 6-9 Mon.
Yeah, and in this particular case, it's just more of winning any hand here and just securing the third place finish.
Coming in first or second was incredibly unlikely with the point difference, so I think that makes perfect sense. It is Ricci only, kind of an interesting amount of foo. Well, I guess not, since those are both simple tiles. It's the foo is not particularly significant, not in a way that raises the value of the hand.
So Kinyan's obviously bailing this hand, doesn't really care at this point. I mean, she could, like I said, she could deal in, but doesn't really matter here. As Lucas sumo's the hand, cements the third place finish. Again, preventing Corak from trying to catch up here. And Kinyan, yes, off to a wonderful start here at a plus 36, 27 points ahead of Erik, who finished at 34.6 for a positive 9.6. Lucas, as we said, confirmed the third place for minus 13.1. And unfortunately for Corak, he'll have some work to do here at a minus 33.3. But as we said, there's 3 games left to go, so still anything can happen in that time span.
And it looks like we'll have about 4 or 5 minutes before the next game starts here. Were there any particular sort of play styles that you noticed or decisions people were making that stood out to you, Edwin?
It's just more of my curiosity has always been because I'm familiar with most of these players. The one that I'm certainly not as familiar with is Lucas, because he is a relatively newer player, and the fact that I had heard that he was definitely more on the digital, very efficient side. So there was always that wanting to see how exactly that kind of thinking went into the game, which is why I kind of mentioned earlier about that, from that 7-8-9-9 shape, why he decided to discard that 9 pin after drawing I guess, a relatively random Sozu, in my opinion. It did work out in the sense that he ended up drawing the 3-so to go along with that. But then from the 4-6-8-8 shape, I thought, well, you could. I'm trying to remember if he had the pair before then. If you just drop the 8-so, because then you have the double you have the Ryokan shape of the 4-6-8, or you just drop the 4, because at least then you'd have the 6-8-8 shape, which could accept more tiles. But instead, dropping the 6, which is directly in the middle, things like that. Like that type of stuff is what interests me, knowing where I've heard his background is on this, and not knowing much else. Was there something on your side there that you found interesting, or something that you were looking at in particular?
I thought it was neat seeing the way that the stats that we discussed before the game kind of ended up showing themselves. I mean, we saw a couple hands where Corak was slowly building these very large hands rather than playing more like Erik did, like you said, trying to control the table, calling a lot, making fast hands, building value that can still be had open. And yeah, just seeing how the stats did actually link up to their play was pretty fascinating for me, because a lot of times people will talk about how, like, oh, well, you shouldn't pay any attention to stats if you have less than 400 games. Like, you must play 5,000 games before you can look at any of your stats at all, because nothing else matters. It's all over the long term. But you really can learn something. I mean, all of these stats are based just on 20 games, and we did kind of see them playing out here.
And looking at the table assignment here for game number 2, Kinyan, who has the lead, is sitting as last dealer, which I'm trying to figure out if that's more of an advantage or a disadvantage, in the sense that as last dealer, even if, for instance, maybe if she ends up, being in 3rd or 4th place, she's not necessarily as concerned. Whereas, and again, it's just because we're talking about game 2 here, where it's still relatively early and it doesn't necessarily matter as much. But yeah, I'm wondering if seating placement here is going to play a factor in this second game here.
The only time I feel like last dealer is a disadvantage is when you are going into all last in first place, but only by like 2,000 points. And basically anybody sumoing is going to put them ahead of you. Any case other than that, the control you get in knowing that if you just exit Tempai and exhaustive draw, it all just goes away and it's all over is pretty beautiful. Now, I'm in part biased because I play a lot of Sanma, and Last Dealer is way, way more influential in Sanma than it is in these four-player games. So I might have a little bit of bias there, but alas, the game is starting with the first Dora being the three-so, and Corak here as first dealer having a so-so hand. Got a couple of Rionman shapes, a pair, and then a lot of floating tiles. So we'll see what he is able to put together with that. Erik on the right has a pair of Wests, which is unfortunately not his wind, but the rest of his hand looking pretty nice. A lot of ways that hand can improve very quickly. We might see an early Ricci out of him if he's able to get some nice tiles there. Across the table, Lucas has at first I thought it was a bunch of pairs, but it's mostly just because all the pairs were in Sozu. Although that 9-so draw is definitely going to push that hand along quite nicely. Now with the Rionman, a Rionkan, a pair, or two pairs, and then the triplet of 9-so. That's kind of an interesting two-away that he's got. And then Kinyan on the left just drew the third Haku. Will we see the Dora come out here? Because it is a float. No, we do not. Kinyan elects to discard the Rionman 7-8 shape, wanting to make sure that she gets value out of that hand, either as a Honitsu or with the Dora 3-so. I do imagine that if she were to draw next to the 3-so, she would keep it.
Well, see, here's the thing. She drops the Dora now, but interesting that on turn 2, she still had the 1-3 shape and decided to discard the 1, which would make you think the Dora was going to come out eventually anyways. And if she was going to go for the Honitsu, then I guess it might make sense that you might want to get rid of that part first because you want to get rid of the dangerous tile. But it's interesting how she ended up going from the 1-so to the 7 and then back to the Dora eventually.
That is a very good point. I had totally missed the 1-so dropped. I do wonder how that decision played in. She is now Tempai, waiting on the 3-mon and the 6-mon, which is not as good as Rionman weights normally are. There are only 4 tiles left, 2 3-mon and 2 6-mon, but they are all in the wall, so we could easily see her draw into that.
The other interesting bit, though, is that it's not necessarily clear that this is a Honitsu. She did drop the 7 after. She did drop the 7 later, but I don't know if you could necessarily pin her on a Honitsu at this point.
Yeah, and since it's not in the Dora suit of Sozu, I feel like people are going to be paying a little less attention to it. We'll have to keep an eye out, see if people are discarding Mon tiles. Although so far, I mean, everybody's incorporating Mon tiles pretty cleanly into their hands, other than Corak. So,
speaking of Corak, do you think, especially if, again, looking for value here, would you think that he would go for a Chitoi if he drew the 3-so, or do you think he'd try to push for something even more expensive?
with the 3-so draw, I feel like he would take that. I mean, Chitoi Dora 2 with a Ricci as dealer is 12,000 points minimum. Very easily can reach 18,000. That's a lot of value, although it is not going to matter, as Kinyan did draw one of those 3-mon that were still in the wall for a 5,200 point hand.
And Corak did actually commit to the Chitoi, so yeah, was going to go that direction if he had managed to actually draw in that way.
Erik now dealer with the 5-mon being Dora. I always love it when a middle tile is Dora. I feel like it makes everything a little bit more dangerous. Kind of interesting to see how people play around that. A pair of Norths in hand, which might lock the hand out of being able to be opened as he has done so much. So let's see how he ends up playing it. He has a few good shapes. Lucas on the right has already called the Hatsu and has just pulled in a Tuso, which does fit into the hand. I wonder, yes, we see him throw away the 7-9 Kanchan shape, keeping only one shape in Mon, but since that shape includes the Dora 5 Mon, I imagine we see him keep it. Now the question is, what does he do with that Hatsu? Yes. Oh, he cons the Hatsu and pulls in the 3 Mon, finishing that Mon shape. Is now waiting on either the 2-so or the 3-so, which is pretty nifty at this point in time. We might see that weight get improved if he draws a 1-so or a 4-so, but for now, has a very early tempai with a pretty nice little hand. Across the table, Kinyan is also very close to tempai, although obviously not caught up with Lucas. Has the South, which are also a guest wind for her, and then just kind of waiting on a couple of shapes to finish up. She is still 2 away. And then on the left, Corak also has pretty nice shapes, is 1 away. So he just needs one more tile to get into tempai here. That 1 peen was not it, though. What will he drop? Okay, he's dropping the 3 peen, so he's entering a headless Ishanten, where if he draws into any of the shapes, he can either discard from the other shape or discard from the 1 peen to get his tempai. The new Dora is the 7 Mon, which didn't really benefit anybody. Nobody was sitting with 2 or 3 of them, although Erik was holding 1, draws the 6 Mon into that Kanchan shape, and is now waiting on the 3-so and the 6-so. That is not Pinfu, but it is Richi Tanyao Dora 1. Dora 2,
Dora
actually,
2.
since he has a 5 and a 7.
And the thing is, actually, for Lucas, the 1-so doesn't actually quite help him because, unlike other shapes where it's like 2-2-3-3, the 1 unfortunately is a terminal, and so doesn't quite help him get to any bigger weight because discarding the 2 just means the 3, and if he had discarded the 4 for it, he got the 4 for instance, it could have been a 2-5.
That is a very, very good point. Although we see Erik here getting 3 Ura for a Baimon. Oh, 24,000 in East 2. That is huge. An absolutely massive hand.
Yeah, and unfortunately puts both Lucas and Arthur behind the 8 ball here because they were already trailing to begin with, and with Kinyan still, having banked a hand before, it's just made their life a lot tougher here very early here in game 2.
Yeah, Kinyan would not mind a small second place score here. It would probably put Erik in front of her, but keeping Arthur and Lucas far away is to her benefit. She has an interesting hand over there with a pair of souths, a pair of wests, 1 east, and 1 north. Maybe vaguely entertaining the idea of some sort of sushi hand with the winds, but I imagine that will be abandoned sooner rather than later. More likely just trying to leave options open to call into a Honitsu. That hand looks rather slow. Meanwhile, Erik, as dealer here, has none of the Dora Chun. Corak has, in fact, already called those, although he is still Bushanten, it appears. But Erik has a hand that looks very, very good, but is relying on a couple of pinchons. And even though he feels like he's not very far away, that's gonna be slow growing. So we'll see if he's able to catch up, especially since Corak was able to get another call and is now Ishanten. Lucas, meanwhile, go ahead.
With with Kinyan's hand, she doesn't necessarily need to abandon it as it stands right now, because the only reason why she might is if you might be worried about, even to add in insult to injury, having that be a Honitsu or anything. You do have to worry about Corak being Tempai, having 2 calls, but Kinyan could easily have, you know, some value on her side as well. But it would also be difficult in the sense that with a single suit, it might be hard to defend anyways.
That is a good point. Especially since Korak's hand does not look like a Honitsu, which makes playing defense against it a lot harder. Korak's weight could be practically anything at this point. I assume everyone probably assumes that he is either Tempai or close to it. And he is, as a matter of fact, 1 away, but I wonder if we'll see people playing safer tiles. That eight mon, though, wasn't particularly safe. It was just kind of the best discard other than the East to come out of her hand. Who's waiting on the 4 mon and the 4 peen? Was that Lucas that was Tempai there? And elected to not keep it after drawing the Forso?
Yeah, it was the 4-pin Formon, I believe.
Has identified the Sozu as being dangerous, did not want to discard the Forso. Yeah, and is kind of determinably keeping it as his Tanki here. Corak able to call into Tempai will now be waiting on something. The 9 peen or the Tuso.
I think that's a great play because if people are already suspecting a particular suit, I think by hedging in this sense, by playing either suit, it might help them out more in terms of completing the hand off of somebody else.
Yeah, and as we see, it ends up being a good call with what everyone is holding as well, since we see all 4 Forso being kind of locked away into people's hands. Now, while it's only a Tanki for Lucas, he was determined not to discard it. And we now see that Kinyan, as soon as she draws that dangerous 9 peen, tosses the East instead. Although we could still see it come out next round.
I can't imagine with her and Erik with the small dealing rates that Kinyan would even risk anything at this point.
Oh yeah, she tossed, just as you say, she tossed the safe 8. So that's a pretty clear fold. Now, no one else is even going to be able to enter Tempai again here.
Yeah, and there's the last Tuso. So it looks like Corak will just have to let the hand die and take his 1,000 all, which isn't bad, but it would have certainly wanted more out of that.
Going into East 3 here with 2 Honba, which is nothing to those extra 600 points could be useful for someone. The Dora is the 1 mon, and Lucas is our new dealer. He has some struggling shapes in general. Is going to need a lot of help for this hand to catch up, even though he does have 1 Dora. Kinyan has a lot of pairs. She has 5 pairs. Oh, she's already ish on 10 for Chitoy. Although that hand has a lot of tiles next to each other, discarding the 4 peen is definitely leaning into the Chitoy there. As you said, getting rid of the middle tiles early. And then Corak across the table has good shapes in Monzu, good shapes in Sozu, and then a pair of Haku. So his hand could speed up considerably should he decide to open it. Though Kinyan might hold on for that Haku for a while if she decides that it's going to be the best thing to hold on to pursue Chitoy.
Yeah,
and then
it's somewhat debatable because, again, looking at it from my perspective, she's definitely, you could theoretically point to her in terms of having just like a Sozu Honitsu, especially what's being discarded. So I don't even know if I could hold on to terminals at this point, and I might actually try to switch into a different suit outside of the one that they think I'm waiting on.
And it will take a few draws for her to get there, since she does have so many honors stockpiled at this point. Erik, meanwhile, has Inner Tempai, is waiting on the 4-mon and the 7-mon. It is currently Tanyao only, but if he were to draw the 5-mon or the 6-mon, that would be a Toy Toy.
It would, but I don't think it matters. Again, much like Kinyan with her lead in the first game, you'd probably just be more concerned with moving the game along more than anything else.
With a table that is so full of incredible players like this one, the more time you give everyone to catch up to you, the more you let them get into a rhythm and get repeats, that's definitely going to give them a bigger chance.
Now, see here, Kinyan's gotten Tempai for Chitoy, but it's kind of sad because her prior 3 draws would have given her 3 Onko. And she discarded every single one of them, which is probably sad.
Yeah, it's one of those things that she definitely made the probability play there. I mean, you're less likely to keep drawing those tiles than the ones that you have yet to pair up, but it does always feel bad when you're just kind of looking at it and going, oh man, I could have had such a monster, especially since you need a big hand to catch up with Erik at this point.
And see, the thing with her, instead of fully committing, she's still watching out for paying in at this point because she still wants to keep her second, which is the reason why she probably, well, wait a minute. That East was live, wasn't it?
Corak discarded it. And Corak called Ricci, so it was safe against his Ricci.
Okay.
Corak, who does have just Ricci only at the moment. And gets 1 Ura from Erik directly, which Erik doesn't really mind paying into, but definitely helps Corak, puts him in a better position, only 600 behind second place Kinyan now.
Well, Kinyan in the sense that even if it's only 3,900, you still have half the game basically left to go roughly, and Kinyan still got 2 dealerships. Even catching up at this point isn't necessarily out of the question, and her hand to start out with isn't too bad to do so.
Oh no, absolutely not. Has 3 Ryanman shapes and a Ryankan, and so there's a lot of ways that hand can develop. That includes Sanshoku. I mean, you might not necessarily force it, but you're gonna take it if it comes. Anybody else have hands that seem like they could challenge her for speed here? There's a lot of Yakuhai out. Corak with the pair of Easts and Lucas with the pair of Hatsu.
Yeah, Corak could play for speed a little bit here. Although realistically, even if he did, I still think he's still probably trying to find value because he is sitting in last in terms of overall standings. Yeah, and even for Lucas, I don't even know if he can afford to be fast either. I mean, they want points regardless. They'd rather take points than losing it, but winning small hands is pretty much trying to win by 1,000. I suppose a death by 1,000 cuts it'd be like winning by 1,000 base hits if you were, and it's that's basically as hard a hard way to go in terms of in that sense.
The only person who has a shot at any sort of value here is Erik across the table. Has a pair of the Dora 9-mon, but has easily the slowest hand.
Wouldn't take
Corak
much though.
Was able to draw the 30.
Much, though, for that slow hand to become actually useful, though.
A good friend of mine always says that he looks at any hand, and no matter how bad it is, they'll always say, "Well, with 2 or 3 good draws, it could be great." And that's kind of true of every mahjong hand. I feel like that's a good attitude to take. So maybe we should look at these hands that way more as well. With a few good draws, 2 good draws can make pretty much any hand competitive.
Does that help Kinyan at all? I don't think it does it? Because she's already discarded. Yeah, she discarded the 2/3, so I didn't think that 4 was going to be that helpful for her.
Yeah, the only way it could possibly help is if she, wanted to just kind of shift down to maybe make Sanshoku more of a possibility, but no, it didn't do anything positive for her. Currently, she really is waiting to finish the 3/4 mon or the 6/7 peen shape. The 4 peen kind of being locked up as the pair at the moment. Oh, she can enter perfect ish on 10 now though, with if she discards the 7 peen or the 3 peen. She will have a pair, a Ryeonmin, and then a Ryeonmin pair.
The only issue here is that I don't think she'd want to end up on a Pinzu wait, just again based upon her discard. She'd love to wait on that 2/5, but you're already end of second row. I don't know what you're gonna do here.
I mean, and so many Pinzu and so many middle Pinzu have already been discarded at this point. I mean, we see 2/2s and 2/5s in the discards. Yeah, just discards the 6 peen. Not taking the perfect ish on 10, which is fine. It doesn't really matter. This hand's not going to get any value at the least case. Lucas though calls into Tenpai, takes waited for value for a while, passed the Hatsu the first time it came out on turn 3, but takes it now, waiting on the 6 peen or the 9 peen. Winning 1,000 points is certainly better than winning none. Oh, but Erik, sort of chasing, is waiting for Shenpon on the 8 peen and 9 mon. Has a Dora wait. There's still one of each left in the wall, I believe. Oh, and now we have a chase from Corak, who immediately gets the Apatsu on that Kanchan wait from Erik. Oh wow.
Yeah, I can imagine that Erik's not necessarily happy with that, because if you looked at it, Erik was never. I don't think Erik was ever planning on getting the Dora there. I think he was planning on getting that Suji 8 pin to his 5 pin discard, which would have been perfect for him. But instead, gets derailed by the Kanchan wait, pays 10,000 into Corak, and now it's kind of a new ball game for everyone, really.
Yeah, everything is completely changed. I mean, that swing takes Erik from being kind of an untouchable bird flying through the sky to being right with everybody. Even Lucas now on a good sumo would be right in the thick of things. So that was really a huge equalizer.
Well, realistically, the person that's benefited the most from that was Kinyan, because Erik having lost those points now means that Kinyan is now actually in a position to make even further ground on everybody else if the game were to end as currently standing.
And as we see, she has made 2 calls already, has pawned 2 Yakuhai, the North and the Hatsu, to get into Ishanten already in the first row. Did not call Khan on the 4th Hatsu, probably keeping it as either a safe tile or waiting to call Khan once she gets into Tenpai, but she does have the ability should she ever choose to. Meanwhile, Corak calls Khan, flipping the 9 peen as the new Dora, which nobody has. And Erik entered into Tenpai waiting on the 8th, so is keeping it Dama, but that would be Ipeiko, so he can win. And there's Tenpai for Corak. Oh, this is a fun wait. Could win on the 4, could win on the 5, could win on the 8 so. Anything else?
I
think that's it.
That's 4, 5, 8.
And then across the table, Lucas is entered Tenpai waiting on the 3 so and the 6 so.
The thing is that Corak's kind of locked everybody out at this point, because nobody who is trying to bail here at this point is going to discard a Sozu in all likelihood, unless somebody else leads the way.
Yeah, the only way to do it would be to follow suit. Although Erik did discard the. Was Erik the first person to discard the Tuso there? The call has me a little confused. Has me a little tripped up of whether
Yeah,
Lucas.
I'm not quite sure either. But like I said, it's like unless you're pushing for your hand, I don't think anybody's realistically dropping Sozu.
Erik thinking about calling here. I wonder, or at least is hesitating. Either there's a hesitation, or our stream is frozen a little bit because he is the only person that could call. Could either call a 789 Chi or a Pawn, but I don't know how that would advantage him at all.
Maybe shifting the Tempai, right? Shifting it into a well, would he actually discard the 7-so in that situation? I don't know if he would anyways. So yeah, probably not. I don't know. I'm not sure what you'd do, because you'd have to discard either the 7 or the 8-so, and we already established that those were dangerous tiles to begin with.
Yeah, and either way, he would lose his Yaku.
No. Okay, so Erik's just drawn the 1 pin, right? So 1 pin's not actually guaranteed to be safe here, is it?
It is. The 1 pin was dropped by Kinyan at the very end of the second row, which was after.
Okay, yeah.
I do think we're having just a little bit of technical difficulties here. It seems like the game is a little frozen up.
Yeah, the thing is that the screen was refreshed, so right when he drew the 1 pin. So I'm not. There's been some. I've had issues like this before where the game just freezes for everybody, but then nobody actually times out, and then eventually the game continues. But unfortunately, I'm not quite sure exactly what happened here.
Erik must have won. No, Erik has the same score. Kinyan must have won. Kinyan's score went up by about 3,000, and Corak's has gone down. So Corak must have dealt into Kinyan.
Right, because Kinyan was she sitting Tempai at that time when that last part there? But we might need to go back to that later on. We'll see if we have time for that. But anyways, we're here in South 2 now with Erik being dealer and still with a roughly 8,000 point lead.
We have the 3-so being Dora.
Of which
Erik...
Corak has 1. Again, looking for value. Oh, wait, never mind. That's a really fast reachy by Erik here as dealer.
Ricci Dora 1. No other value there, although the hand does look very pretty with 2 1-2-3s and 2 7-8-9s. That is unfortunately not a Yaku, although it feels like it should be. Lucas has the hidden tune and a pair of Souths, but likely won't be able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, my guess this is probably more of a shutdown Ricci here, because it's already the weight's not necessarily that good. It's an early Ricci. It was probably going to be hard to improve on the hand significantly. So probably just take the early Ricci, try to scare everybody away, especially as the leader in the table, and then just try again the next time around, hopefully.
Corak has been able to get pretty close to Tempai here, though. Is Ish on 10?
the thing though. With the early Ricci, do you figure that people will think that it's going to be a bad weight? It probably is, isn't it? If you were sitting, somewhere as an opponent across the table,
it usually is. At least that's what it appears to be. If we were to just kind of run an analysis on it, like a 4-turn Ricci is usually going to be garbage, but the first 2 discards were the 5-mon and the 2-mon. And then the Ricci was called on the 5-peen. So when the first few discards are middle tiles, that opens the possibilities up considerably. Because if you're discarding a 5-mon, that probably means you do have good shapes in hand, typically. We do see Erik sumoing on the 3-peen, though.
yeah. Because the reason why I ask is because later on, even though it was obviously in Ricci, he had discarded the 6-pin, and while you normally would play a Suchi trap, I mean, would you be a little bit more hesitant to do something like that, given the fact that it was an early Ricci? Was kind of where I was trying to go with that before you sumoed.
Yeah, and which I think is a very good question to consider, and is usually probably going to be based on the value of your hand as much as anything. Yeah, but now he gets a repeat as dealer and has once again created a bit of a gap here, about 16,000 ahead of second place Corak at the moment. The South is Dora. It's always fun when the round wind is Dora, but so far the only one out at the table is Lucas's on the right. As for Erik's shapes, has a few good shapes, but none complete yet. So we'll have to see if that hand's able to grow into anything. Kinyan, meanwhile, has called Chi on the 6-7-8-mon, which is not even Ishanten. Is still 2-shanten for a Tanyao here. I kind of wonder what the
this is Ishanten. This is Ishanten. In fact, she's standby now, waiting on just
there we go. I wasn't connecting the 5-peen and the 7-peen in the correct way. That makes a lot more sense. That feels good. Is Tanyao only, but is Tanyao, is Tenpai, unlike what I had suggested there for a second.
And I think for Kinyan, the thinking is just, this hand is not necessarily going to be that expensive. I'm just going to try to bank the win now, get the 1,000 points, move the dealership along, hopefully, get a chance at a more expensive hand later. And again, since you mentioned about South being not just the door, but the current round marker, probably trying to shut down anybody else from building a big hand at this point as well.
Yeah, it does draw the Dora South, and of course immediately discards it since she can't incorporate it into her hand. But that did not make Lucas discard his. He's still holding on to it, which makes sense. He's in last by almost 10,000 points now, and would very much like some value. He's also Ishanten for Chitoi, as it happens. Although he could also switch into Honitsu according to what he draws. Yeah, is going to stick with the Chitoi path, having drawn the Forso and discarded it.
My guess is, looking over at Corak, if he really wanted to find value, he wants that Itsu, and he wants it now.
Still needs a 2-mon and a 4-mon to make that happen. Many of which are still alive in the wall, so could get there.
Yeah, because if he really, he pivots that way. That wasn't expecting that. Did he think the 7-pin was dangerous?
Well, so let's see. What do the players think Kinyan has? I mean, if you're just thinking all she has is Tanyao, then yeah, the 7-peen is more dangerous there. She also, I mean, with a call that early, it wouldn't be unthinkable that she has Sanshoku, especially since she doesn't have any high tiles in the other suits discarded as of yet. So it's possible that Corak thought the 7-peen was perhaps doubly dangerous for Tanyao and Sanshoku to Kinyan, who is the last person he would want to deal into at this point.
It's true, but at the same time, it's even if he paid in, like she's already discarded Dora. It's not, and even with Sanshoku, the hand is not going to be that expensive. So maybe he just decided that there was just not enough time left in the hand, and it just wasn't worth it anymore.
But Corak doesn't have a dealership left. Kinyan does, and going from 2,000 points ahead to 2,000 points behind is a meaningful switch. And yeah, I feel like the fact that if it was anybody but Kinyan who could be waiting on that 7 peen, I feel like it might have been a different call.
Yeah, and Kinyan tried to improve her weight a bit, I believe, by switching out of just the Kanchan 6-pin into the Shanpon weight, but 2 turns later, unfortunately, did draw that 6-pin. So, but realistically, it wasn't going to be worth that a lot anyways. So the 1,500 she gets from the Tenpai is probably even good enough for her, regardless.
Oh yeah, especially since it put her 600 points ahead of Corak, so she is now in second.
That, and also, Erik gets to keep his dealership, so now Kinyan has a chance to build, much like Corak and everybody else, to build a more expensive hand.
With 2 Honba on the table, the middle not quite expensive enough to make a very fast cheap hand more worth it than usual, but even 1 Ricci stick would double the value of an open Tanyao now.
Kinyan's hand's getting together really quickly here.
Whose hand was that? I'm sorry.
Kinyan?
Yes. She's Ishanten?
She's Ishanten, and it could be more. Well, she is Tenpai now. I don't know if she'll take the 8-pin Ricci just. Yeah, she doesn't. I mean, she Damatens it, but what I mean is that she wasn't going to go Ricci just that 8-pin weight.
Oh, and Lucas pulling in another So tile, which is what he wanted to see since he has pushed this Honitsu, is able to pawn the 8 So, and now he is Ishanten.
Oh, but there comes the 8-pin.
Yeah, and there's that real swift 2,000 point difference that puts Kinyan both above 30K, which affects the Uma, and 2,000 ahead of or 4,000 ahead of Corak rather.
Yeah, and I think the not Ricci was. I mean, she did. I don't think she knew it at the time, but after the second call, there by what was it, by Lucas, she probably was better off not declaring Ricci, considering the direction that hand was going.
Yeah, once people are less likely to discard Sozu, that kind of inherently makes them more likely to discard everything else. Lucas, once again, drawing kind of into a Honitsu here, has a lot of disconnected honors, but if he's able to pair any of those up, this hand could speed along a little bit. The Dora, though, is the 9 So not as helpful to him. Corak, on the other hand, yeah, enters Tenpai, waiting on the Hatsu or the 8 So. A nice little honor Shenpon wait here.
Yeah, and here I think the value for Corak is just trying to get any points. Oh, that's painful. I think in any other situation, Corak would have waited 1 turn because he had an Itsu possibility, and drawing that 9 So Dora would have. Oh, that's painful.
I mean, that's essentially a 4-Han switch. I mean, that would have, well, it wouldn't be Pinfu, so just a 3-Han switch, but adding in the 2-Han for the Itsu and the 1-Han for the Dora, I mean, that would have been absolutely massive. That would have given him a shot of first and all last.
See, this is the reason why I think Corak was looking at this anyways, because he figured he might get value out from that way, and still to try to get the Itsu, like, it would have been good to get it, but the chances of him getting the 1 or the Dora, maybe he just thought wasn't big enough for him to not just hit the button and declare the Ricci. But man, if he had just been able to wait 1 more turn.
Yeah, and he does also know that Lucas has to push everything as dealer so far behind. So being able to win, it has a lot of value. But we're going into now. This is all last, right? Yes, this is all last. Kinyan
Oh.
as dealer is
Pretty
in a
shot
weird
10.
position. Yeah, is Ish on 10 needs to win this hand. If anybody else wins this hand, or if this hand ends because she is not 10 pie, she would likely drop below 30k, which would in in essence reduce her score by 6,000, since she would go from having a positive 5 UMA to a negative 1. So really needs to get one win here before she can feel a little bit safer letting things go later. Although Corak is so close that this is
Does
likely
she
to
pivot to a
contend.
Honitz? She does not. She just takes the easy Tempi. With that 3-so draw, I was wondering if she might actually pivot to a more expensive hand, but she's just going to take the win, at least this time around, and bank what she can get.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good call. Like the last thing you want to do is wait around just a little too long and let someone else catch up to you here. Being the first to act, especially as a dealer, has some pretty huge advantages. Meanwhile, is anybody else especially close? Corak could call the tune if he so chose, but he is not particularly close. I think Erik maybe is the closest contender at the moment,
Sumo.
with the complete shape and Sozu and Peen, but it doesn't matter. Kinyan gets the sumo, which puts her in a position now. She a Mongon sumo puts her in first. So
Her hand could, no, I don't know if her hand can get there yet without some help, but she could at least get about 7,700 with Honva 8,000 even if it's just Richi Sumo Pinfu and then hits an Uradora.
yeah, and 700 directly on Erik would be absolutely beautiful. Although Erik has a gorgeous hand across the table. The 1-2 mon is a little unfortunate, but all the rest of the shapes, I mean, that hand looks like it's going to be Tenpai absolutely any second. And not only that, but a Tenpai that more than likely is going to be able to be Damaten, which Erik would absolutely take at this point, I would think.
Kinyan could have
Everyone
called that.
needs.
Kinyan could have called that 6-so and tried to push an open hand here. Elected not to, and now she's drawn another pair. And that's to me, this is awkward as dealer, because if you're looking for points and you're looking to continue your dealership, I may love Chichoy, but that's just not the way to do it.
Yeah, it's just like the tiles are almost taunting her at this point. And there's the 3-mon. Yeah, Erik just got into that very fast Pinfu Tenpai and was able to take it from Navitas and just end the game, which makes Kinyan plenty happy. As it stands, that leaves Erik plus 32.6, Kinyan plus 7.7, Corak at minus 6.9, and then Navitas at minus 33.4, which keeps Kinyan in first, but only barely. Is only 2.3 points ahead of Erik, but both of them are 80 points ahead of Arthur and Lucas, of Corak and Navitas, which that is a massive gap to overcome.
I wonder, this is going to make a very interesting dynamic for the final couple of games here, because even with the fact that there's effectively two people, as of right now, competing for the title. The other two, in order for them to have any chance, are going to need big scores the last two games, and hopefully knock the other two down. And what makes it even worse is, like you said, Erik and Kinyan are basically neck and neck. It's one thing to be able to climb over one person, um, you know, where or two people where like maybe it's like a stepladder thing where like one's only about maybe 6 or 7 points ahead of you, and then the other person's 70 or 80 points. But you literally have to make Erik and Kinyan finish third and fourth and then score big hands yourself if you want to have any chance at coming back, really.
The one advantage I think that Corak and Lucas do have here is that since Erik and Kinyan are neck and neck, they might cannibalize each other. I mean, they have to stay ahead of each other. If one of them was really far ahead, they could just play defense and chill out. But being neck and neck is going to make them have to push slightly more than you normally do when you're 80 points ahead of everyone else you're worried about.
Yeah,
So
the only problem I would say with that is that they're they're going to compete with each other, but I don't think necessarily they're going to be risking a whole lot. All they're really going to be doing is just looking at the other person, really. You know, because to them it doesn't really matter initially where they finish with respect to Arthur and Lucas. It only matters where they finish in respect to each other, both Kinyan and Erik. So I don't know if there's going to be any cannibalizing of each other, but I think that's why I think it's going to be a lot harder for Arthur and Lucas to make any headway, is because for Kinyan's and Erik's perspective, it does the other two players don't necessarily matter as much in the grand scheme of things, unless one of them happens to put a huge number on the board. And by huge, I mean we're talking about like over 50 and maybe even closer, maybe even higher than that.
yeah, and that is a very fair point. And just kind of to agree with that a little bit, they are anytime you are less than a placement apart, the scores themselves do become a lot less important. Even if they do come in third and fourth here, while that would weaken their positions, I mean, the worst that a placement above someone could give you is 4 points. If you're in some sort of scenario with reduced UMA, with either the 9-5-1, if three people are above 30K, or the -1, -5, -9, if three people are below 30K. So since placement guarantees 4 more points than someone else, whoever is in first going into game 4 is going to be whoever out of Erik and Kinyan places the highest, even if they come third and fourth, more than likely.
And here's the other converse thing. And obviously there's, we're not talking about collusion here because obviously we're not. But
right.
For Arthur and Lucas, it's almost the same thing with respect to on Kinyan and Erik's side, because Lucas and Arthur cannot send the other person to fourth place because that doesn't serve them anything. So they basically so basically it's the whole friendly fire thing where it's like, well, I can't, even if I want to take points off of the other guy that's sitting next to me here at the bottom, it's not necessarily benefiting me, because then that means that neither of the two people I'm trying to chase is going to sit in fourth.
Yeah, and this is where UMA being a part of the game is going to be huge. Like you say, we almost have this is just a beautiful example of some game theory. All right, everyone sit down. It's math lecture time. Because that's exactly the scenario we have here, where they're obviously not going to collude. These are all, they are playing. This is not obviously professional. No one's making money off of this, but it is professional in sort of just the strict attitude sense, where everyone here is playing seriously. They're doing their best. They're putting their all into their play, and we've seen fantastic play out of all four players. I mean, these have been amazing games. The scores make it look like Erik and Kinyan have dominated, but all four players have played fantastic. So as you say, no collusion is going to happen, of course, but game theory is important. Like, it's a branch of math that got studied a lot for a reason, where I feel like there are a lot of advantages for Corak and Lucas to not call around on each other and to try and hit Erik and Kinyan.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how these last two games play out, because it's like, if they're seriously trying to win, they can't necessarily be hitting just anybody. And so, yeah. Eventually, though, at some point, if we get to the fourth game, this game theory may just end up going out the window because, there's one thing to be playing game theory. It's another thing just to be looking at it realistically and being like, I could do this, but this is just like it's so much of an ask.
What you just said did hurt my heart as someone with a master's in mathematics, but that aside, we go into the third game here. The 4-peen is Dora, and Corak is our first dealer again, 2 games in a row. Although Kinyan is not the last dealer for once, so we've got a little bit of a change up. Corak is this hand 2 away, I believe, because there's not a 5th shape.
Yeah, it's still Yuan Shanten at this point, although now Ishan 10, although would prefer oh actually no, there is no preference here because if he manages to draw the 3-pin, he would have just been waiting on another 3-pin.
Corak kind of with an awkward hand. Lucas, however, able to call twice, is now Tenpai waiting on the 7-mon, has the Easts and 1 Dora, so I wonder if that 7-mon will come out from Kinyan, and it does. So right off the bat, we got a quick 2,000 point hand from Lucas on Kinyan, who is now dealer. The Dora is...
about to say that Kinyan was going to have a decent hand shape, but then I forgot that we hadn't switched the perspectives yet, and it's actually Corak that has some decent shapes to start out with this with this East 2 here.
That is beautiful. I mean, very much looks like it's going to end up as Tanyao.
With Dora 2 now.
Currently. Yeah, that is absolutely gorgeous. That should come together very quickly. Could even open for it with the Dora in hand.
I think he will. I think he's gonna. I'm looking at that, and I'm betting that. Well, not really betting, but I'm banking on the fact that I think he's probably gonna try to find a Sanshoku in here somewhere. He won't force it, but he'd sure like to have it.
Yeah, a 3-4-5 Shanshoku perhaps. I think that would be slightly easier to get to than the 4-5-6. The problem is the 2-4 shape in the Sozu is what makes the Sanshoku a little bit harder to reach. And part of why I feel like he might open.
I was thinking about more along the lines of a 3-4-5.
Right. And the 2-4 shape makes the 3-4-5 awkward. Although he does take the 7-so chi, kind of locking in that he will keep the 4-so as either a pair or a triple. Being able to call pawn on the 4-so is huge, though, to make that a mangan.
Yeah, I think for him, once Erik decided to make the first call there with the Chun, any chance of like keeping making a big hand close was probably out the window, and he wanted to keep up.
And Erik just pulled in the 3-mon. Erik is Ishanten, has just the Chun only, but has pretty wide acceptance to get into Tenpai. Can accept anything from 1 to 4 of the Manzu, and okay, elects to keep the 6-peen and toss the 3-peen, perhaps leaving the option of moving towards something like Toy more likely, but Corak takes the 3-peen pawn and is now waiting on the 3-mon and 6-mon. Oh! Draws another Dora and is able to get rid of the 8-peen, having the other triple to discard away from, swaps out the pair, and now has that beautiful Tanyao mangan. Oh, and the 6-mon. Okay, Erik keeps it, does not discard it into that, senses some sort of danger, and is able to avoid it. I mean, there it goes, though.
For a turn.
For 1 turn. Saw that 9-peen come down and just couldn't resist hitting the button. So far, though, Corak and Lucas getting exactly what they want, winning off of Erik and Kinyan, taking the top 2 spots early here. Corak with the advantage, able to pull in the 3-door in the last hand for the mangan. On to Lucas's dealership, and Lucas here set up to have a pretty valuable hand. Has 2 of the Dora 8-peen. Just needs to round out these shapes some, and is just instantly going to push this to open. Wants to have as much value as possible. As dealer, kind of scaring everybody with the Dora pawn, slowing down their hands. I
think that's probably more of what the goal is here, because of the fact that the rest of the hand looks fairly slow. By making that Dora call, it gives everybody pause as to how close dealer is with with 3 Dora showing. So I think the idea was to scare people, but it looks like Erik is having none of it.
Yeah, it did not work on Erik. I mean, Erik entered and it started with, I believe, the first Atazuke call we have seen this whole championship. Called the 1-2-3-peen before the Chun were locked down. Which I think is just absolutely fascinating. Meanwhile, Kinyan calling for, it looks like, probably pushing the Honitsu here, although could go with Yakuhai only if necessary. The 1-so comes out. Let's see who gets discarded if she elects to call it. She doesn't call it. She leaves it alone.
Well, I don't think it's just the Honitsu. She could theoretically turn this into, like, if she gets the 8-mon, for instance, she could turn this into a Chanta.
Although that would only add 1 Han to the hand, but that's obviously better than none. Meanwhile, Erik taking the quick 1100 point sumo, just totally unfazed by everything going on around him. The master of calling here. Yeah, this round is just blazing by. No repeats as of yet. And that draw by Erik. This is a beautiful Ishanten that he has here. I mean, it's not perfect, but it is beautiful. Just God, on turn 2, no less. So this hand, very, very quick. We'll see if it's able to get to Tenpai before anybody else can act. The next most interesting hand is probably across the table. Kinyan there has just a string of Manzu. Only needs a 5-mon to have all the tiles necessary for an Itsu, although she's still lacking other shapes. That hand could go in a lot of directions at this point. Corak and Lucas are both just a little bit behind. They're both holding on to 1 Dora. Lucas can incorporate it a little bit easier than Corak can. Although Corak does have 2 pairs of Yakuhai and abandons the Dora, is just going to take the Yakuhai he has. And there is that Richi from Erik. He was not able to stay away from Tenpai for long. It is Richi Pinfu, and I believe that is all. Waiting on the 6-so and
just got her Itsu if she's willing to drop the 7. She did.
Which she is. And so now she's waiting on the 1-peen and the 4-peen. The only disadvantage of which at this point is those tiles both look very dangerous against Erik.
And this is something that I'm not sure people are familiar with, but when you have a naked 5 drop like you do here with the 5-pin with the Richi, the thing that you have to be also concerned about, because usually you're worried about maybe Ryonmen that are around like a 5-5-6 shape, but the other thing you have to be worried about with a 5-pin drop like this is a 1-4 or a 6-9, which does not help Kinyan. Because normally you wouldn't discard a 5 like that, but you would if you had a 2-2, like a 2-3-5 shape or a 5-7-8 shape.
Although we see the 9-mon coming out from Corak's hand, and 2 Ura hits the pair, gets the 5-so as Uradura, which propels Erik into first place and sends Corak right to last.
Yeah, and with that, put some separation also over Kinyan here, heading in here in game 3, because again, the difference was fairly minimal here. It's basically whoever can finish above the other. But now with Erik being 2 places ahead, plus the 8,000, if the game were to end now, he would certainly feel as what they would call engulfed Dormy.
Yeah, I am really interested why Corak discarded that tile there because his hand was not worth anything.
Yeet.
So maybe we'll get a chance to check that out later. However, Erik, another cast Ricci as dealer, waiting on the 3-so or 6-so. This is again just Ricci Pinfu. It's one of those hands that I as a less experienced player would definitely be tempted to wait around for the Sanshoku kind of meaninglessly and just have Corak shout Ricci at me from some endless void somewhere. But Erik probably wisely taking the quick Ricci here to try and slow everyone else's hands down. I mean, it's a good weight. It's a fantastic weight with the 3-6. It's not a bad weight whatsoever.
It's not, although, and it still could likely be come out from anybody's hand. But in terms of drawing it himself, he is just down to 1-3-so. Everything else is locked in everybody else's hands.
Which is incredibly unfortunate for him. Although, if people are pushing, which they might have to since we are considering points as a whole, this is not like a ladder match where your whole aim is to avoid fourth or else. So, according to the positions people are in, and as a matter of fact, Lucas, one of the players who needs to make up a lot of ground, does in fact deal in. Now, it's only no Ura this time, so it's only a 3,200 point loss for him, but that's still significant. And now we have the reverse. At the very beginning of the game, we started out with Lucas and Corak taking the early lead, but now we have Kinyan and Erik in, I guess not first and second yet. Erik is still 600 points ahead. The negatives threw me off a little bit there, which I'm ashamed of as a mathematician, but alas, it happens. Erik, though,
Well,
this hand has really interesting shapes. Go ahead, though.
Well, and the thing is that actually, despite the fact that Erik gains points here, the fact that Kinyan's closer to finishing second here means that even if she finishes a little bit behind, even if she still finishes behind Erik, if she finishes in second, then all is not lost heading into game 4.
For Kinyan.
Yes.
Yeah, if they're able with whoever comes first, or with whoever comes ahead between Erik and Kinyan, as long as they're able to stay one position away from the other, there's going to be a lot of possibility for them to fight for that.
And the thing that I was going to say beforehand, well, at least before Erik decided to actually have a dealership as compared to where we were before, where the game was flying by, is I was wondering if the game going as quickly as it was actually benefiting either Arthur or Lucas, because if you think about it, if it was just an eight hand game and nobody had a repeat dealership, how much ground could either Arthur or Lucas gain on Erik and Kinyan?
Yeah, they with those 8-hand games do typically, as you are pointing out, tend to be very cheap games. So that is a good point. So while they do want the game to be longer, it doesn't exactly benefit them for it to be longer because Erik's getting all of the repeats. Although he hasn't
that's the unfortunate part. As unfortunately for both of them, they both paid into Erik, and it's has kind of wiped out the efforts they had kind of put in beforehand.
We do have a very interesting tension building now between Kinyan and Lucas. Lucas has 2 of the Dora Hatsu, and likely would push this hand against Kinyan, while we have a Ricci from Corak, which wins with the 2-peen and the 5-peen. So you know what? Never mind what I was saying about the tension with the Dora. It didn't end up mattering.
Yeah, and I think again, Corak was, in as much as Corak is trying to look for value, he just needed to end that particular run to try to build something of his own, which apparently seems to have been the right call, because he is sitting pretty good with his hand with Tudora.
Yeah, the Tumon specifically being the one, and I mean, do you think he opens this hand if a Haku comes out?
I don't think he does it. I don't know if he does it immediately, because in theory, he could make this hand expensive just by drawing the correct tiles.
The 9-mon is an interesting draw, though.
Okay, yeah, see, you'd wonder why he drops the 4/5. I think he's going to try to push for maximum value here if possible and go for that Honitsu, possibly Dora 2, maybe 3 if he can somehow get another 2-mon somewhere. I'm guessing that's where his direction is going at this point. He's going to push Honitsu hard here.
Oh yeah, and that value, and again, while we got to keep in mind, the 6-peen draw is kind of sad, but as you said, the value is what's needed, and even though this table right now looks very close, we do have to keep in mind that Corak is 80 points behind first and second, so even if he were in first, he would still need to push for value. Like these points are more important than just this game. Meanwhile, Lucas is calling for a 2-3-4 Sanshoku, or could just be Tanya. It doesn't have to hit the Sanshoku as it happens.
Yeah, my guess is that there wasn't much value to be had here, and would well, I don't know, because would you mind having Corak continue his dealership if it meant that Corak hit one of the other two players?
I guess there are two different mindsets you could have at this point if you are either Lucas or Corak. You can think to yourself, all that matters is first place, so everything I do is going to be with first place in mind. Or you could think to yourself, okay, first place, that's 84 points away. There's 2 people who are 80 points ahead of me. I'm not going to bother with that at all. I'm just going to get in my best possible position.
See, in this here Corak has pivoted away from the Honitsu, but probably the only reason why he has is because Lucas has called twice, and so getting the quicker hand here by waiting for 5/8 is probably the better choice than to go full out Honitsu when everybody won't be dealing into you.
And Lucas is now Tenpai for the Sanshoku Dora 1, waiting on the 5-so or the 8-so. Erik's calls are kind of interesting. What's left in his hand does not look particularly thrilling, and now we have a Ricci from Kinyan. Wait, is that's a wait on the 9-so
north
and the north, both of which there are only one remaining, and both of those are in the wall. And then the 5-so immediately comes out and Lucas doesn't take it.
Dude, no, it wasn't Tenpai. I thought he was. He wasn't. No,
Lucas is Tenpai. And is not Furitan. Lucas just passed that wrong.
My guess is that he'd rather just take the Tenpai points and hope that Corak is Tenpai.
I think that makes the most sense. Oh, but because the 6-so was his winning tile, right? I think that's the only reason. Winning off of Kinyan does nothing for Lucas.
For that small amount.
Overall. But Corak...
Corak unfortunately gets the sumo, which is actually the worst case scenario for Lucas. I think, like I said, Lucas I think was trying to have Corak keep his dealership, but 6,000 all doesn't necessarily.
I don't know that is worst case scenario for Lucas. As you said, it had to be first, second, 2 games in a row for both Lucas and Corak for either of them to have a shot. 6,000 all, I think, is fine for Lucas. If everybody else is going down 2, if Corak's in first, you accept that, okay, Corak gets this first, I have to get to second. But as long as we're first and second, if I can get first next time, and if Corak's able to follow me into second, then I still have a shot. Like, I don't think...
I think you're right. This is where my game theory is a little bit more fuzzy, so you're going to have to help me out here. And I don't mean fuzzy in terms of fuzzy logic. I just mean fuzzy in general.
Well, for someone who's claiming not to have a good grasp of game theory, for you to even know the words fuzzy logic does impress me. We have an early Ricci from Lucas here, waiting on the 5 peen and the 8 peen. This is Ricci Pinfu Tanyao, gets it from Corak and does take it. Any Ura? No Ura. But Lucas is in a good position now to, since he took it directly from Corak, try and make a play, get into second, just overtake Erik, or if you can get a good run as dealer, overtake Corak and take that first. But
and the thing is here, I mentioned before about friendly fire in this case not being a good thing. You don't want friendly fire in between, Arthur and Lucas. But because of the fact that Arthur had just won an 18,000 point hand, he could actually afford to give a couple of those 1,000 points back to Lucas.
Yeah. And just to make sure it doesn't pass by without us commenting on it, Kinyan is already Ishantin for a Chitoy.
This is oh my gosh! This reminds me of it. Okay, this is going to be a humble brag, I know, but there was a time in which I did manage to get a Honitsu Chitoy, and I won off of a Haku off of the pin. But dear God, this quickly?
Yeah, it's been like this basically from the start. I mean, this is beautiful. Of course, it's slow to get to Tenpai. I mean, we see there are currently 3 4-mon in Lucas's hand, and then 2 5-mon are out in people's hands as well. Now, Erik has discarded his, so it's going to be really hard for Kinyan to get there with the tiles that she has currently. But yeah, there's as a matter of fact, there's only 1 tile she could draw that would get. Well, no, I'm totally forgetting about the 7-mon. But still, a very small amount of tiles she could draw to get into the Honitsu Chitoy Tenpai.
And at this point, you're already hitting middle of second row. People are starting to wise up probably to the fact that you're running Honitsu. So,
do you call this 4-5-6?
I actually thought you might, considering you're middle second, but
yeah, I would have actually really loved a Chi there. Take the 4-5-6 Chi and then ditch the 8-mon and 9-mon. And then you're just waiting on the 1-mon, West, and Chun as your opponents, which, even though it looks like you're going for Honitsu, are still a lot easier to come out. We do have 2 back-to-back Riccis now, though. Lucas calling Ricci, waiting on the 9-so or the South. The South being the real big win there, since he is sitting in the South wind. That would be a double South. And then Corak chasing with the 3-so and the East. The East, which is Dora. So we have 2 potentially big hands here, both with Honor Champagne Wait.
In Kinyan, she's Tenpai now, but there's the East!
Oh, man. And Kinyan got into Tenpai waiting on the 4-mon, 100% of which were locked up in Lucas's hand. Oh my God, that's huge. And Lucas wins off Corak 2 hands in a row.
Other way.
Corak went off Lucas. I said that backwards. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Corak gets the 18,000 point hand, gives some of those points back to Lucas, and then Corak takes it back with interest.
Oh my God.
And probably at this point is leaving Lucas in the dust, but unfortunately not necessarily helping his own cause.
Yeah,
he has to hope that Lucas can somehow make hay here with his final dealership here in South 3.
Yeah, with the weight that Corak had, I don't blame him taking that run there. I mean, you have to.
No, you have to.
You have no choice.
You're not going to not declare that Ricci and not take a win from anybody, really. So,
but it does look like Corak not giving Lucas any time to breathe, is immediately taking 2 Sozu Pons and is just relentlessly chasing this Honitsu, immediately gets the Haku Pon, and is now still Ishantin for this Honitsu.
Which looks, oh my gosh, and it doesn't exactly look pretty, and in the meantime, Kinyan is like, Well, you can call 3 times, but I'm still just going to declare my Ricci here, waiting for a 1-4 pin.
Yeah, it's just a nice, chill, Ricci Pinfu. Tanya, if she is able to win on the 4-peen.
And Adora.
And Adora, the 3-mon being the Dora. And there's Tempai for Corak, waiting on the 2-so and the 5-so. 2 of the 2-so are currently locked away in Kinyan's hand, and the 5-so are nowhere to be seen, so those could easily be drawn here. And now we have Lucas shifting into the Honitsu as well.
Well, I was gonna. Well, that's interesting because in order to get there, it had to discard the Sozu, which weren't 100% safe. Well, no, wait. These calls have made me forgotten who led the way. Maybe he was led the way, and he could afford to discard those Sozu to go for the Honitsu.
That is the hard thing as commentating this, where when there are there's 7 calls on the table right now, the order does get kind of whack. I kind of wish that we could see from this top down view who had called what. Lucas getting into the Tempai.
A double 1-4 pin rate.
How many 1-4 pin are left? There's still 1 4-peen left in the wall, and there are 2 1-peen left in the wall.
Ah! No, he there's no way. He can't, but what is he going to do otherwise?
He has to abandon Tempai. Oh my god, that's incredible. So 3,900 goes to Kinyan, and then just 2,900 to Lucas.
I mean, in the end, it wasn't like value-wise, like for a double Roan, that's not like a total of 6,800's not a lot, all things considered. But oy vey.
Boy howdy. And I actually do have a question here. Who gets the Ricci stick there?
Whoever, I think it's whoever's closest to the person that dealt in. So in this case, I believe it went to Kinyan, I think is how the rule goes.
Okay, yeah, that is not a rule that I am familiar with. So I did want to check in on that. The Lucas stuck here with a lot of Kanchan shapes. The 5-peen could be integrated into his hand, but yep, there. And you know what? Speaking of which, there it is. So I wonder, what does he discard here? Discards the 3-peen. Yeah, the Ricci stick did go to Kinyan. It has been confirmed. Meanwhile, what does Erik is? How many pair is Erik Ishanten for Chi Toy?
Yes.
That is in fact 5 pairs.
Although again, if you're he discarded I wonder how many pairs he had when he discarded those other tiles earlier, because you definitely get rid of that 7-mon if you're gonna commit.
And then Corak has called the tune here. What advantage does Corak have to getting a quick cheap hand?
Unknown, because again, you'd want to have both Erik and Kinyan finish in 3rd and 4th, and obviously, as it stands right now, that's not happening. I think the fear is that if you try to let this, as much as you want to try to play the game theory here, like you can play game theory all you like, but if it doesn't fall your way in any given point in time, it could all just fall apart. So I think Arthur is basically saying to Lucas here, it's like, I know we need to work together here in order to be 1 and 2 here, but I can't give you full reign to do whatever you want. You're gonna have to figure out how to get yourself into 2nd yourself, I think, is what it is.
And another good point to go alongside of that, if Erik is below 30k, that is beneficial. It's not as beneficial as Erik and Kinyan being third and fourth in general, but with 3 players below 30k, all 3 of those players would get negative UMA, and it would reduce the hit on 4th place. But as long as players are losing points rather than gaining them, all of your points are making positive net progress. So that
Yeah,
could be playing a role as
sort
well.
of, because I mean, even if you were to look at it from a first to
Yeet.
second, first to third, and a 3 sinking scenario, it's still 16 and 20 points. That's that you're only gaining 16 to 20 points plus whatever point difference you have. That might be enough to get you halfway there, but then you'd have to repeat the process again in game 4. Which, I mean, you're gonna have to do that anyway. So maybe, I guess, this is if Corak's gonna take that route, then that's what he'll do. Oh, there is the Cheetoy Tempai. Oh, 9 so wait, I love it.
Yeah, and that was actually a very interesting play that Lucas just did. Lucas maintained the Tempai, waiting on the
Yeet.
Shanpon 6mon and 3-so. If Lucas had discarded the 3-so, would have had a 3-sided wait, but obviously would have dealt into... oh wait, no. It was only red because it was his. I was sitting over here thinking that he was avoiding dealing into somebody, but he wasn't. He was avoiding dealing into himself.
Kinyan's got a what? 6-9 weight. Doesn't matter. Ooh, that's actually... see, that's what this is what I said. Like, Corak is like, I'm gonna try to finish my hand, but you're going to figure this out yourself. And Lucas is getting there.
Yeah, has worked up, is now just a breath away from second place. But in the same way that Corak wouldn't mind everybody being below 30k and getting negative UMA, Lucas really needs to get above 30k. A second place that's still negative is meaningless to him.
Right, pretty much. If that's the case, then the only person he's really helped here is Corak, and he's basically said, it's basically like I can't make it, I'm gonna catapult you forward, go.
Lucas now is Shanten for a little. Wait, yes, is now Ishanten for a little Pinfu hand. It's kind of a stretch.
Possible Tanyao. But again, I think this is just more about keeping your dealership more than anything else.
Having some nice speed. The Dora is the 9-peen. The only one we see so far is in Corak. Well, Corak just discarded it, as a matter of fact. Lucas improving his weight, but still not quite to Tempai yet. Meanwhile, Erik with the 2-peen draw is now Ishanten. Is now perfect Ishanten, in fact.
Boom.
Corak trying to build even more value up there.
What's he making? How's he getting this value? Where's it coming from?
Looking at definitely a Honitsu
Sumo.
here, if nothing else. Oh!
Rinshot!
Well, that's a way to stop it right there.
Tanyao Rinshan gets himself to 29.9, is literally 100 points away from 30k. Wow. And just to clarify, the extra Dora on the con are flipped immediately, yes? So that means that no new Dora were flipped.
In the WRC rule set, regardless if it's open or closed, the con Dora is shown immediately.
Okay. So bad luck not getting any extra Dora there to get over the 30k, but we now have Erik with another one of those hands that looks gorgeous because you've got so many tiles in a row, but in reality does still need some help. Has 3 honors and those nice stretched shapes, including the terminals, never helps. Corak on the right has a pair of Haku and probably would take a quick win at this point.
Yeah, definitely would take the quick win here because at this point it's like I've done what I need to do. At this point the quote unquote alliances may be off at this point, especially for Korak's side.
Yeah, and Corak just entered Ishantin. Kinyan across the way has a really nice looking hand, but it is just kind of lacking in speed a little bit. Needs just a couple more draws to get there. And then Lucas on the left. Is that Ishantin for Chitoy again? Yeah, that's 5 pairs. Lucas has 5 pairs right now, but this could very easily become a normal hand. Has nice shapes. Is kind of hedging his bets. Keeping the Ishantin for Chitoy, but could easily switch to even Rion Peiko with a 2-mon or 4-mon draw instead of taking the Tenpai for... Oh no, that would be... No. Instead of taking the Tenpai for Chitoy, since he does need some value.
Home.
Yep, and there goes Corak calling with the Haku right there.
And is now Tenpai waiting on the 7, so 2 of which are still in the wall. Kinyan we haven't really talked about, but she's in kind of an awkward position here. I mean,
but it's not terrible because I mean, even if the game were to end now, it's a minus. It's an 8-point UMA loss with another roughly 8-point loss in points. So it's only it'll only be a loss of about 16, and then with the point difference, it's still within playable range, really.
For sure.
Even with a last here, it's not the end of the world.
Erik now has perfect Ishantin, a pair, a Rionman and a Rionman pair.
Each.
Oh, we got the Ricci from Kinyan now waiting on the 3-so and the 6-so.
Oh, I like that.
Pinfu.
Well, no, I like this especially because look at her discards before the Ricci. It's with a 4 and the 5-so.
Oh, that's incredible.
Would you really pin her on a 3-6 at this point?
Oh, definitely not.
For me personally, looking at that, I would be more thinking that she's on a Pinzu weight more than anything else.
And Erik could Erik have just taken a Tenpai, or did he just shift his hand a little? I was thinking that Erik had just gotten into Tenpai. Now Erik is Tenpai, waiting on the 6-peen and the 7-peen, although is Yaku-less currently.
Unfortunately for Kinyan, a lot of the 3 and 6-os are stuck. So unless somebody wants to commit to discarding it, she's not getting it. She gets Hote though, if assuming no calls, and they're.
It was not meant to be, but that does put Erik back above 30K. But not close enough to just be brought low. Although Lucas, being the only person not Tenpai, is now dropped into 4th, which is, even with it not being a 4th that hurts too much as far as points go, like minus 20 is a pretty good 4th compared to
out of the 4 hands that I see
when you're negative 46.
I think out of the 4 hands I see here, though, if there's any hand that could easily that could complete here quickly, it's Lucas's.
And does have 1 Dora 2-mon in hand, so if he can pull that together, like you say, that could get him somewhere. Meanwhile, we do have a possible Sanshoku forming for Erik here with the 6, 7, 8. A couple of floating tiles outside of that, though, so his hand's not as close to finishing as it appears at first glance. Corak, on the other hand, once again has a Yakuhai that he could call just to quickly finish this out. Ooh, Erik drawing in the 8-mon is now closer to that to that Sanshoku that he would like
Discards the
to
Chun,
get.
though, which Corak then subsequently calls, so now he's pushing forward with his hand.
Although Corak is still pairless, so Corak needs a little bit of help, and that four peen does it. Corak is now Ishanten.
Yeah, his hand looks a lot better now.
Kinyan is also Ishanten, although there's no real good way for her to get to a good weight. And there's Tempai. Does she take it? Yeah, she takes
does,
the
but not.
Tempai.
Yeah, it doesn't take the Ricci though.
Oh, and then we've got a Chi from Erik. Oh, that seals in the Sanshoku.
Yep.
Just needs to draw around the 3-mon or the 3-so to get into Tempai here. Or could even pawn. Oh no, the Norths are dead. So the North is stuck as the pair, as is.
Oh, there we go.
And since the North is dead, the 3-mon is the only way for Erik to win, both of which are currently being used. So unless one of those players folds against some other entity, those 3-mon are not coming out. And Lucas didn't end up getting particularly good draws here, was not able to bring that hand together. That helps. Lucas is now Ishanten, but
is probably loth to discard that door, really. And unfortunately can't now because Corak is now Tempai, and now Kinyan's declared Ricci.
improved her the 4-7, but it doesn't matter. Corak drew in the Dora and just ended everybody's hopes. And as was being signaled with the mouse, brings Erik below 30k. That is massive. That is half of the work that he needed to get done that round. So Corak there finishes 50,400 for a plus 35.4. Erik, with that last sumo from Corak, is just barely below 30k and is stuck with a negative 1.2 with that 29,800, which does hurt for him, I'm sure. Kinyan got the minus 14.8 with her 20,200, and then Lucas with his now second last of the entire beta season is at 19,600 for minus 19.4. Unfortunately for Corak, those that didn't quite get the reversal on Erik and Kinyan that he needed, but he's now 45 away from first. I mean, he still basically needs both Erik and Kinyan to come third and fourth, and for him to come in first, obviously, if he wants to have any kind of shot. Either of them coming in second would pretty much preclude him being able to get first at all. But that was quite the exciting game. After the blitz of the first three hands, we ended up with quite a lot of repeats there at the end, which really led to some fascinating situations. And Corak, as we talked about beforehand, with his tendency towards big hands, was able to just really hit them that time, laid in wait and got a couple of big ends.
Yeah, and so now as we look at the standings, as we said, at this point, Arthur has now catapulted himself into at least some form of competition here. Kinyan, as I mentioned before, yes, did suffer that third place finish, but is easily within still striking distance of Erik. And unfortunately for Lucas here, it's been a very, I don't know if you want to call it frustrating, but just not probably, I don't know how you want to put it, but it's just like, for somebody who hadn't had any fourth place finishes, unfortunately has had two of them here in this championship, and is the only one that's really, I mean, roughly mathematically out of it, pretty much. So, yeah, it's it's gonna be definitely interesting dynamic now heading into game 4 with 3 people definitely playing for something, and not to say that Lucas isn't, but for him, realistically, there's not really much of a choice here at this point than to just go for Hail Mary hands over and over again, trying to score big points, because winning those 1,000-point, 2,000-point hands just doesn't do anything anymore, because there's only one game left to go, as opposed to where we were sitting in before game 3, where at least Arthur and Lucas could have worked together to try to put both of themselves back into contention. There's just nothing left there, and Lucas is just going to have to try to work, kind of is fending for himself against everybody else at this point.
As we go into the last round here, can I ask you a completely unrelated question?
Sure.
As the person who spearheaded the ARML in general, kind of pulled all of this together, we're going into the final hand of the beta season. The last, not the final hand, the final round, the final game. In a sense, we still have some playoff games that need to happen to determine who ends up in which leagues, but in a lot of ways, this game right here, determining the champion of the Beta League, is the culmination of everything that you and everybody in the ARML has worked towards up until this point. How does that feel?
I mean, it still feels, that's kind of, to me, that's a bit of a loaded bag in a way because of other things, but really, I would love to be able to say that I'm happy that we've gotten to this point where everything's been complete. We're finishing up the first season. It's been a success, but at the same time, it's still incomplete because it is only the first season. There have been other leagues that have attempted to do something like this that have unfortunately been unable to sustain themselves. And so, in as much as I would like to be happy about it, at the same time, I can't feel like I can rest on anything. I feel like I need to continue working to make sure that this league is a success. And in as much as I'd like to, people can tell me that it is, I think I'll probably feel more comfortable once we put in a couple seasons and the concept, at least that I've put here on paper and here on the stream and everything, is brought to fruition. Well, not brought to fruition, but is proven that it can last. Let's put it that way. I think that's kind of where I'm at. I guess it's cautious optimism, if I had to summarize it in a couple words.
I think that attitude in itself is what has enabled you to create such an amazing space for us to come together here. I at the very least will kind of speak for everybody I've talked to about it, and that it has been a blast, and I am very much looking forward to see where it goes, and I'm very thankful that you put it together and that I happened to see it. So
yeah,
yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that in the future that we definitely see more people come in, because like I said, in terms of getting people that I've known from the Richie Mahjong community here in the US, I've gotten quite a lot of them, and I wouldn't have even started it if I didn't think I would have the support of these people. But in as much as I could get those people from the existing community, really, in order for this to be something that's sustainable, and yes, I do know Game 4 is underway, so I'll try to make this quick. But in order for this to sustain itself, and in order for this to be successful, it will require the growing of the American base and people who are willing to, who have played Mahjong Soul or Final Fantasy 14 and Domon Mahjong or whatever, to be like to become interested in the game, and then to hopefully look for something more, and then join not just like my league, but maybe their local club if they find one that's nearby, or start their own. Really, what the American community needs is, first of all, we just need more players. And then second of all, and what my goal partially with this also is to raise the floor of the players here, because in the end, what I want to see is the US compete with the Europeans and eventually the Japanese in terms of skill level. And that might be a hard ask, especially for the latter part. But we already have people in the US that can compete in Europe. And that's the first step, really, if we're looking at internationally. And I really do believe that if we're able to build a base and get enough people, that we can certainly do a hell of a lot more than what we have right now. And I'm hoping that this and the other things that are out there are helping us get to that point. So anyways, need to get off my soapbox. We're in game 4. We can always deal with that other stuff later. So
yeah, thank you very much for that heartfelt response to me putting you on the spot. And now we have the final round of the Beta League Championship here. We are starting the second row. Lucas is first dealer and has a nice little hand here. Is lacking a pair, so isn't quite ish on 10, but could get to Tempai pretty easily with just a couple of draws. On the left, Erik's hand has been progressing pretty interestingly. That triplet of 3-so is just kind of chilling in the middle of that hand. Is currently serving as a really good candidate for the pair if the 4-peen or 7-peen is to be pulled in. He is ish on 10. Kinyan on the right has some awkward shapes, has the triplet of 5-mon, but nothing else really going on there. Has incorporated the Dora 8-peen into hand, but not in a very good shape. Meanwhile, Corak has gone ahead and opened on the 2-3-4-peen chi, and is still two shanten. Although that 7-peen does allow him to incorporate the Dora into hand as well. Lucas
has the 2 Dora, and I believe would easily take the Tonki weight if necessary. Probably would love to get another Dora instead, but is certainly not going to give up on having a relatively expensive hand here if possible.
Yeah, and it would be interesting as well to see what happens if Lucas were to draw the 3-mon or 4-mon, since that would put him into a Furitin weight on the 6-peen and 9-peen. Kinyan got the couple of good draws that she needed, is ish on 10, but currently would require discarding the Dora in almost all paths to Tempai, which looks deadly with Corak's discard pool. Corak only has the 1-peen discarded. Everything else are middle Mon and Sozu, and has 2 Kinzu calls. And I mean, we can see that he just has a normal old hand over there, but everyone else has to be kind of worried that he has a hand that's either Chinitsu or Honitsu.
Oh, and there goes Lucas getting that 7-8 Shanpon weight, but it's all dead at this point.
We see the 2 7s and the 2 8s. I mean, I don't know that I would call it dead. Kinyan, as we said before, very low deal in, is unlikely to deal the Doran to dealer here, but it still theoretically could have come out. However, we end with Corak and Lucas Tenpai, and a very exciting, exhaustive draw in East 1 here. So right off the bat, with a repeat, Lucas has a gorgeous hand. I mean, starting with a Sanmenchan, what's better than that? I guess starting Tenpai. Starting Tenpai might be a little bit better than that, but I mean, it's still gorgeous. Even has a Dora in hand, just needs to draw a 7-peen to make use of it currently. Kinyan on the right has a lot of very nice shapes. It is a little bit of ways from being able to make a 3/4/5 Sanshoku, though would probably take that over the 1/2 Pinchon and Mon that she currently has.
And I kind of want to interrupt here because I was gonna say that with Lucas's hand, it did look great, but the problem was that he was sitting with just a hanging Dora there, but he had paired up the Dora, and now his hand looks especially good at this point.
Oh, and there's the Tenpai.
The Tenpai.
Riichi Penfu Dora 2 ain't that is a pretty solid. On a Sumo or a Ron, that will be a Mongon. A guaranteed 12,000 points.
And I mean, yeah, you would have loved that extra Dora, but I mean, you've already got the Mongon, so you're not going to complain.
Now, the extra Dora wouldn't have actually added anything to this hand.
No.
And we can't let an Ishanten for Chi Toy go unnoted, so I will point out that Corak could enter. It is now Ishanten for Chi Toy. Has 5 pairs. Oh no, discarded the 8-mon. So
yeah, I don't know if it would have been worth it for him to push that, because again, it is Chi Toy, and there is a Dora discarded, but he doesn't see Dora anywhere, and I'm just not sure that'd be worth it for him.
The one thing I do love about Chi Toy, though, in general, is just the fact that you are able often to play around with Chi Toy kind of niftily. It's in my opinion the easiest hand to keep Tenpai while still playing a pretty solid defense, or the very least like a pretty conservative Mawashi.
I mean, there are times in which you get down to the point where you've discarded that safe tile over and over and over again, and then you've run yourself into a corner where you're like, I want to keep my Tenpai, but this tile does not look safe to discard.
And it tends to come right in that last round where you tell yourself, it'll be okay, and you end up dealing in.
Yeah, meanwhile, you just have to kind of figure out, you just kind of have to judge it at some point. It's just not worth it, especially if your hand's not valuable.
We can currently see every 4-peen and every 7-peen at the table. But the only one that Lucas can see is the 7-peen that is the Dora indicator tile, because Erik has an Anko of 7-peen in hand, while Kinyan has the same with the 4-peen.
And the thing that probably is killing him is like, I can see all these 5 and 6-pin discarded. Why can't I see the other tiles?
They can't be using them, surely. Ooh, there's the 4th Formon. This would be a fun time.
I'm gonna be old here, and I go, they can, and don't call me Shirley. I just dated myself, but I don't really care.
Well, at least you have a date. All right, and
only that were actually true. But anyways, we're done with the hand here. Lucas's Tenpai, and we move on to East 1-2.
And so 2 exhaustive draws in a row. There are now 2 Riichi sticks and 2 Honda in the middle of the table for a grand total of 2,600. I mean, that effectively triples the value of an open Tanyao. Now might be a pretty good time for 2 of the players that we see with Yakuhai pairs here to call it out.
Well, open anything, really.
Yeah, and Corak has a pair of Wests. It should be noted, once again, we can't let it go unnoted, Erik is Ishanten for Chi Toy. which honestly is incredibly lucky for him, because those 2 Souths...
It was unlucky because... to me, it's unlucky because he could have had his Tempai, because if he were going for Chitoi, easily one of the six, the 6-pin, for instance, could have been discarded. Something else other than that 2-pin was the first 2-pin was probably a better choice. And unfortunately, that comes with some experience in playing with it, other than just looking at it and sighing and going, "Why do I have to do this?" Which I think a lot of people do, because admittedly, Chitoi is just not that expensive of a hand and not something that people actively go for. Unlike me, who has just accepted that that's my way of life, and so I've gotten used to how to play it.
Corak has pulled in another Yakuhai pair here as the Wests and the Hatsu, and unlike Erik and Kinyan, who are at a standoff here, no one else has one, so can easily develop. Lucas just got a brilliant draw on the 5-mon. Has one Dora and the one So, which unfortunately is the most likely tile to be cut if he does get to Tempai, as things currently stand. Oh, 3-mon changes things. Yeah, is now going to go for effectively a headless Tempai, although if the 7-mon or a 4-mon is drawn, that would cement the 4-mon as his head. So
Question here: what is it? Was that better to drop the 2-So in that case?
Well, his hand wasn't going to get to Pinfu as it stood with that triplet of 8-pin. So I feel like the only way to get any value other than Ricci with the hand that he had was to drop the 2-So. Just allowing.
Oh, never mind. I was trying to think here, because I thought maybe if he was able to incorporate one of the, like a 3-So or something like that, he could add more Dora into the hand. But I can't figure out a way to. He'd have to go backwards to do that. So never mind.
Yeah, as it turns out though, yeah, if he had discarded the 1-So right there, he would have been Ishan-10 for Sanshoku, which would have been an upgrade for Sanshoku and Tanya, but instead draws the 7-pin, which deals into Corak's hidden Yakuhai. And Corak got the 1,300 points that was actually worth 3,900, as we mentioned at the top. Those quick hands that you normally might not call into for, especially someone like Corak who wants a lot of points, the 2 Ricci sticks and the 2 bonus counters in the middle of the table changes the landscape completely.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out here, because Arthur, the only way that Arthur can really win this is because realistically, even if he were to reverse this, if he were to reverse everything again, it still wouldn't necessarily help him enough. He'd still be short. I don't know if he can get away with having Erik and Kinyan finish not 3rd and 4th in this last final game here.
Okay, just to throw a very small amount of math here, since I know most people are not big fans of listening to people do math out loud. Best case, or maybe worst case scenario for Corak, right? If Erik and Kinyan are 3rd and 4th, preferably Erik 4th, Kinyan 3rd. At most, you're getting maybe 25 to 15, anywhere in that range from the with them having negative UMA. You're still going to need to overtake either of them for first place a solid 30 points above starting value. So it's still going to be a tall ask. Not 30 points above starting value, 30 points on top of whatever they're losing. So you need anything less than a 45,000 point game really isn't going to do it for him.
But at the same time, he can't necessarily just sit and try to get big hands, because if he can't bank anything, it doesn't matter. So that's probably why we see the East call in this particular case, is just trying to bank more points, deny Kinyan her dealership, and she's not that far away from being Tempai right now.
Yeah, she is in fact Ishan-10. A kind of a strange Ishan-10, where she's either going to end up with a really bad Tonki weight or is going to pair up the 2-mon or 5-mon. The 2-mon is Dora though, Maybe setting up a Suji trap here. Yeah. You're more likely to draw into the San Minchan and then hope that you're able to pull off the Suji trap. Although that 3-so is kind of a dangerous draw there, because it would deal into Erik, who has San Anko Tenpai. Is Shanten for Suanko, but Erik currently is Tenpai for Tanyao, San Anko, waiting on the 3-so, which his Tenho handle is a reference to. So I feel like that would just be kind of a fated win for him if he were able to pull that in. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see it come out of Kinyan's hand. But we'll see what she elects to do. Oh, there it is from Corak. Oh, San Anko Tanyao Dama from Erik. Wow, what a beautiful 6,400 points.
And unfortunately, that and definitely helping his case in terms of claiming the league title. Although we're still relatively close, so it's not like as if it's putting him out of reach or anything, but it is making Arthur's life a lot harder.
Although, for Erik probably isn't even thinking about Arthur, if we're being entirely honest. Like, I mean, you could think about him, but you're only going to think about Corak if Corak ends up with 50,000 points and is annihilating everybody. Otherwise, Erik's only issue is Kinyan. If Erik finishes in placement above Kinyan, he's basically won it, because that would mean he's minimum third, which would mean Corak needs to have, at most 40,000 points more than him. So, for Erik, your whole life is staying in front of Kinyan. He can actually afford 1.3 points if Kinyan places above him, as long as it's less than 1,300 apart. That would still be a win for Erik, but placing above Kinyan essentially locks him in. Although Kinyan does have an incredible hand. No Dora, but a hand that I don't really want to count the weights on. It's a jumbled mess over there. It's one of those hands that you hate to see in person sometimes, because you're like, all right, this could have 50,000 weights. I really hope I don't end up Furitan somehow.
Yeah, and as a side note to that, usually what I've recommended in our club to people who are having issues with doing weights is, I don't know if you ever heard of like bamboo mahjong. It's probably used. There's probably a different term for it elsewhere, but it's usually a 2-player game where you're playing with one suit and you're trying to. You just draw tiles and then you have to figure out your weight, because usually when you draw your tiles, you're Tenpai already.
And that makes a lot of sense. That 6-so. That 6-so gets her into Tenpai.
Each.
But I don't know. Is it a good weight? No, it could be. It could be like a 3-6 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, is waiting on the 3-peen and the 6-peen, which is just fine. This, and as a matter of fact, is also, as much as it doesn't look it, that is Pinfu, because currently the pair is the 5-so, and then we have 4, 5, 6, and 6, 7, 8 in Sozu, and then 2, 3, 4, and then the waiting on the 4, 5. So that is Pinfu Tanyao Ricci. So your classic Menton Pin Ricci being called over there.
And it's interesting because
there's a 3 for Erik.
You do see Pinzu discarded, but it's nothing in the middle. So, and as much as that suit seems a little bit more or less expensive than it might normally be, that might still be something that Kinyan will have to Suno.
It's like she waited for you to be saying the word.
I guess.
And
wait, it's on delay. This is on delay.
Well, yeah. Well, she calculated that. She's brilliant.
Okay.
And that does put her 100 points above Erik, I believe. If I did my math correctly, yes.
Yeah.
So this is the situation. If the game were to end right now, Erik would still be the victor. So Kinyan needs another, 1,200 points minimum if she wants to change her position. Although, things likely won't end up that close at the very end, but you never know. Things get wild. Erik here has a pretty hand. Has the 2 east just waiting for that double east to get called. If he's able to draw more Manzu, can drop the Ryokan and Pin for a Honitsu. Although, according to the draws, might end up just taking a quick hand, especially if he's able to call that east. Because he is not hurting for points. He does not need a ton of value like others do.
Well, unbeknownst to him, though, like until that 2-mon draw by Kinyan, I don't really see anybody else's hand being all that fast.
They would need to rely on draws, and both Lucas and Corak could call Yakuhai tiles. Corak could draw the Chun, and Lucas could call the Souths. And as a matter of fact, we see Corak going Altazuke here, setting himself up for a potential wait on the Chun, where he can only win on the Chun and not whatever his pair is.
And I was mentioning that, Kinyan was probably might have been the closest, and she's now suddenly gotten a lot of the tiles she needs, and she's sitting Ishan 10.
She's sitting Ishan 10 for Chanta, as a matter of fact.
Not confirmed, but yeah.
Not confirmed. But we like to dream here. She has one of the Dora 7-pin, and Corak has 2 of the Dora 7-pin, although Corak can win on the Chun, but not the 7-pin. Lucas, though, has that Chun. Oh, Lucas, I think, is just folding. Discarding the Souths here feels like it has to be a fold.
Yeah, I think he's rightfully thinking that there's too much danger out there, especially now with what Erik's called, that there's no way he could really safely play this hand.
So we'll see where that last Chun ends up being drawn, if at all. But it looks like Lucas might.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
There it is. Oh, but the 9-pin are almost dead. There is one 9-pin left in the wall, and that is it.
Sumo.
Oh! But Erik gets the sumo instead. The cheap
on the last Dora.
On the final Dora. Dashing everybody's hopes and dreams. Both Corak and Kinyan had absolutely beautiful hands, but Erik just kind of put a stop to it.
And the thing is, that wasn't necessarily cheap. With that Dora, it became 2,000 all, and now there's still half the game left to go. But Erik is at the point where he could have a stranglehold on this game if in another hand or two if this keeps up.
That is a very, very good point to make. Now the only threat he feels, again, is Kinyan. He just has to stay ahead of Kinyan no matter what else. This hand, he needs some draws to make it happen, and that was a very good one. Is now Ishan 10. Both Kanchan weights, but those can easily be walked sideways into much better situations. Lucas on the right is kind of headed towards a Sanshoku there, a 2-3-4 specifically. So we'll keep track of how that develops. Across the table, Kinyan has the pair of Hatsu.
I was going to mention that because of the fact that she had the pair of Hatsus. She did not call either Corak or Erik's Hatsu discard. She thought about the second one from Erik, but she didn't take it. I'm not sure why, because you could still take points wherever you can get it because you still have a dealership. The only reason why I think she may have not is because she didn't think her hand was that close to warrant actually making the call.
Which is fair. If, winning, you can push for 1,000 points, but, you don't have a single-digit deal in calling a lot of one-hand hands. While she does have a Dora in hand, she can only integrate it with the draw of a 5-so. So, and there's the 1-mon.
The only thing is not calling
Eat.
the Hatsu makes whatever she's trying to work with later that much harder and slower. And so now you see Corak declaring the Ricci now, waiting for the 4-7 pin. I don't know if Kinyan really has much option here.
Yeah, no, I bet
she's probably folding it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way she deals in, really. I mean, she's just gonna, she has all the safe tiles in the world, should she choose to accept them. Corak's hand is Ricci only. No, Pinfu. It also has Pinfu, of course, but...
And Erik's probably fine with just giving away his dealership at this point. There's no need to do anything here.
Especially being final dealer. I feel like that always takes a little bit of pressure off. You're like, okay, I don't need this one necessarily. Although that was an interesting shift. The 3-mon was discarded by Lucas, so I suppose it was slightly safer. So Erik,
the 6 is completely safe.
Yeah, the 6 was safe as well. But I think was trying to maybe maintain Tenpai if he could. Corak, though, gets the sumo, which doesn't actually change Corak's position. I mean, it obviously puts him in a better situation. Practically any sumo now would put him in second, but Corak is currently still fourth, which is a far cry from the massive first that he needs to overtake Erik.
I think for Corak, it's like he knows that realistically he's really literally fighting against 3 people, because like Lucas in that particular case, or not Lucas, I mean Erik in that particular case has no reason to keep his dealership. So the game is gonna march forward. Like Kinyan is gonna try to win her hand. So, well, at least until Corak declared Ricci, but I mean he's basically fighting time here. So, get points where you can. If you have to get to your final dealership and then push, but
Luke,
that's kind of what he's looking at right now.
Lucas here just, putting the faith in the Yakuhai, has 2 Dora. The red dragons are the Dora here, was able to get the Pawn of Easts, and is now Ishanten on turn 5-ish, yeah. For him, at least. Did a little bit of skipping. Erik missed a turn in the middle there, but is Ishanten. The only other tune we see out currently is in Corak's hand.
What the heck does Kinyan have over there?
Whoa! I didn't even see that. I mean, what Kinyan has is...
She's not Tenpai yet.
She's not Tenpai yet, no. She's very close, though. She has very wide acceptance. I mean... Almost any so tile other than what, like the 3-so would get her to Tenpai. Oh, there's the tune. Does she hold it and force a Tonki wait? No, she feeds it into Lucas. Now Lucas is ready, waiting on the 3-peen and the 5-peen, and now she is going to be ready to win.
She's stuck. The problem is she looks stuck. If she looks to her left, that looks... I mean, she doesn't have a choice. She has to push. But like, any Sozu looks awful discarding into Lucas, even though he's not waiting for any of it.
The 5 and the 8 would give Kinyan a full flush. There's the 4-peen, though. Deals right into Corak, who just called Ricci. So that is the Apatsu turn. Yeah, and 2 Ura plus the Apatsu is going to give Corak a Mangan.
Yeah, and that really hurts her chances. Although she is dealer now, it's a real uphill battle at this point.
Yeah, the biggest winner on that hand was definitely Erik. Seeing Kinyan lose 8,000 points is now in last place and has to climb above both Lucas and Corak to have any
Oh,
hope.
above anybody. She has to go above everybody, really, because
She
Erik,
again, as long
yeah.
as she's within 1,300 points of Erik, she's good. Oh no, that's
No,
the
she
wrong.
has to
I
be
have the
ahead
wrong
of
way around,
1,300.
right? Erik can be behind by 1,300. She must pull ahead of everybody. Yes, that is correct.
She has to pull ahead of everybody at this point. And unfortunately, she doesn't really have the hand to do it currently. It's going to take a little bit. And I think Erik, on the other hand, does have the 2-4-6-8, which, unlike cheerleading, you do not appreciate. The rest of the hand still looks pretty good.
And he can just kind of freely call almost at this point. I mean,
Pretty much.
Just all you need is the 1,300 points. End Kinyan's dealership, take away her opportunity to get value. Lucas, on the other hand, Lucas was also a big loser. Was a big loser there. Not that he was a loser. He lost in losing his dealership because that was his last chance to go on a rampage. That was his final dealership, and he is now consigned to just trying to, do the best that he can, even though he will be incapable of changing his position.
Which, I mean, is bad here in the sense that, it does finish in fourth. But if you just look at the grand scheme of things, he played the entire regular season of the Beta League. It's hard to say undefeated. It's I guess you could call it undefeated in a way, because, again, no fourth place finishes, which, again, is nothing to sneeze at here. So, definitely a big accomplishment for him. But yeah, in terms of here trying to claim the winter season title, yeah, it's pretty much over at this point.
Although he does have a gorgeous hand right now. I mean, it's shaping up to be a 5-6-7 Sanshoku with a Yaku high. But the Furmon is Dora, and nobody has it really well cemented in hand. Erik has it the best. Being in between the pair of 2-mon and 6-mon is pretty nice, but he's the only person that doesn't need the value.
I kind of mentioned that Kinyan's hand was kind of slow to begin with, but in the span of me kind of talking else otherwise, her hand has suddenly looked quite better.
Yeah, Kinyan has gotten a lot of very good draws, while everyone else's hands have kind of stagnated. Corak's hand has made a little bit of progression, but she was basically the only person going anywhere. Navitas is Ishanten now for that 5-6-7 Sanshoku, having drawn the third tune.
That 7-pin, unfortunately, is very awkward.
Yeah, it almost requires her to discard the Dora. Decides to discard the 6, though, which is fine. I feel like I probably would have discarded the Dora at that point, but there's a reason these players are in this game. They value the things that need to be valued.
Yeah, I think you want to try to get value where you can, because you can try to have repeat dealerships, but there's never guarantees that you'll get that. But the longer you hold on to that door just hanging there, the worse it kind of gets in terms of if you have to discard it later, obviously.
And really, she doesn't need the Dora for value. I mean, here, discarding the Dora, she has Tanya.
Yeah, you're gonna take the Ricci here. There's no doubt about that.
Especially being in last place and needing those points. I mean, Erik now, you can kind of count on the full fold. Ooh, that East is a fun draw for Lucas.
Yeah, but just I think deciding that doesn't want to is going to stay out of it, really.
I guess the only person who might have a reason to push here would be Corak. But
yeah, even then, not really, because he still has another dealership to go. So if he has to pay 1,000 points, that's not the end of the world.
it ends up that Lucas is the only person not Tenpai, which is kind of incredible, really, that Erik and Corak were both able to get there. But as it is, we are repeating now South 2. Kinyan dealer once again. The Dora is the 6 Mon. And her hand, once again, needs a lot of help. But the last time we said that, she got it. So maybe she'll get it again. Corak, on the other hand,
I think it's gonna be a little bit tougher because I think you need some. I would say you need some Yako High help, but I don't know if you're gonna get it.
especially since you are now racing Corak actively. Corak has the Souths, which he is in the South seat in the South Wind, and he just got the double South. He has a Honitsu, so he can call whatever he wants. And he also has the Hatsu. So Corak with a pretty valuable open hand over there.
Not just an open hand, but open hand possibly. Yeah, with the Honitsu. Oh, geez. Yeah, and I think Kinyan's recognizing that too. She probably would have to. She probably was going to have to get rid of one of those pairs eventually, but that 3-so probably gave her some pause for some good reason.
While it wouldn't have dealt in, it would have given Corak his best possible Tenpai. I'm really interested to see what Corak throws here. Yep, the 1-so. Okay. Kind of taking the most flexible Ishanten that he can. Unfortunately for him, Kinyan now able to use all of the Sozu in her hand.
Yeah, again, she's managed to draw rather favorably here and put herself at least in some position to fight for this hand.
She has too many shapes. She's got to discard something. Pulls in a second Dora. What does she toss? The 6-7, right? She's got to throw the 6-peen and the 7-peen.
The sad part of oh my gosh.
Really?
No, see, here's the thing, right? Because you did have to worry about that, but at the same time, having a 5-8 weight looking out at what's on the table, yes, there's 3 8s out, is juicy enough, I think. That it may have been worth discarding the 2-3. Now, yes, discarding the 2 is going to be dangerous, but remember, she is in last. She has to fight for this because it's her last dealership. So yeah, I don't see her necessarily turning away from this. Like, I don't even see her having a problem with discarding the 2. So if it came to that,
yeah. Well, no, I definitely think that she needed a push. But with the 3-peen and the 4-peen out as well, I mean, 2 3-peen had already been discarded. I still think I would have discarded the 6-peen and the 7-peen and kept all the Sozu. I just never imagined that 6-7 shape completing, whether it be from someone else's discard or from a draw.
I would have banked on that. Really, I might have considered pushing that just because of that particular thing. Because the thing is that if you end up on the problem is that you're going to end up on a Sozu weight, I believe, regardless, and as a result, if Corak is indeed on a Sozu weight, then you're easily not going to get your weight. It's going to be hard. It's just harder for you to get your weight as is to get his. So I could definitely see the, especially if Corak does show Honitsu, that, she could push and maybe try to trap it the other way. And I mean, again, like I said, this was kind of inevitable anyways, because even if she discarded a 6-7 pin, that 9 was probably going to go regardless anyways.
Yeah, no matter what she chose, the 9-so was definitely the drop.
So by at least giving herself a shot in a suit that was opposite or different than what Corak's was, she at least would give herself a chance on Tenpai to possibly get that tile as opposed to it just dying there on the table.
And this is essentially Corak's final opportunity.
And the interesting thing is that Corak at 44-7, it's still a far cry because Erik is sitting in second at 39-2, but technically with Kinyan paying in, it's kind of opened the door at least a little bit to Corak and thinking he could have a chance here.
I mean, Corak, as it currently stands, would have second place, but first is still way off. So Corak is exactly 45.8 points behind Erik. If Erik is in second place, and if Erik stays above 30k, that is only a 10-point difference from Uma. So the entire rest of that 45.8, in other words, 35.8 points, would have to come strictly from score difference, which would require Corak having 74,000 points, unless Erik's points go down. If Erik were to drop below 30k, now we have a 16-point difference, which would mean that Corak would only need 29,000 more points than 29.8 thousand more points than him, which is still a lot. That would be minimum 58,000 points.
It's still a lot, but what I was trying to get my point at here was that it looked pretty improbable to begin with. At least the 8,000 points that he got from Kinyan at least might have given him a little bit of extra hope here, but Erik is basically used that 43.7% call rate to full effect here and has basically forced Corak's hand, much like Kinyan's hand was forced the hand before.
Yeah, is now waiting on just the 5-so and the 7-so. I wonder if there's anything that would make him change that weight. I mean, that's not an especially good weight. Like, really, it's just the fact that your hand's a threat. Although Corak, in a sense, doesn't care. I mean, obviously, dealing in would end his dealership, so he doesn't want that. But, I mean, Corak can't fold.
No.
So I feel like a bad weight, like a middle Champon weight, while obviously better than nothing for Erik, is still not ideal. Corak here able to get into the Honitsu.
Unfortunately, is stuck with a 7-pin that he needs somewhere along the line.
Yeah, and Lucas just has so many Pinzu that Corak's Honitsu is kind of never going to succeed. Erik now going into all last. I mean, he's pretty good at this point.
The game is pretty much over because he could literally just fold this, and it would take. I wouldn't take a Yakuman, but it would take quite a bit for Kinyan to overtake here because you're looking at a one-hand game at this point. Because Erik, there's no way Erik is going to continue this game. He'll just no 10 this and end it here.
Yeah, a San Baimon Sumo is the minimum requirement for Kinyan to take first here. Assuming Erik just folds.
And I think, barring any, like, if he can end this quickly by calling, he'll. Well, actually, no, he can't because again, we're not. Well, actually, no, because it wouldn't. No, yeah, he can't end this by winning. He just has to. He just needs to kill this hand as quickly as possible. He can even pay in. He can pay into a hand, and it wouldn't matter at this point.
Yeah, he could Sasha Komi. It doesn't really matter. To clarify, the reason that he cannot open is because there is no Igariyame, which means that if Erik is Tenpai or if Erik wins, the game will continue, even if he is in first place.
Yeah. So yeah, Eric can just fold this hand outright and close this out. And I just don't. There's nothing I can see anywhere on the table that that can challenge this. I mean, you know, there's a couple of pairs here that I don't see Ankos yet. Nothing, no Yakuman to speak of. The door is the one pin, which is unfortunately is rather awkward.
I mean, Corak's hand looks most likely to win at this point, and it's nowhere near what he needs.
Yeah, like if we were to let's just say the easiest thing would be to get a Yakuman. 6 pins are live. There's one 7-pin live. There's one 3-so live, and the tunes are effectively dead unless dealt into, but then it wouldn't be a Yakuman.
Now, Corak is Ishanten now. No, it is not. It's still 2 Shanten.
Well, it's Ishanten for Chitoi.
Naturally.
Chitoi Door 2 at the best. Chitoi Door 4 if possible with the Ura, but again, not significant enough. And yeah, we're hitting third row, and I mean, Corak could take it if he wants to, but the 1 pins are dead.
Yeah, well, I mean, calling Ricci, like, it doesn't benefit him because he only benefits from a direct hit on Erik, and he needs Ura.
Yeah, but even then, Chitoi Dudor with nothing else to go along with it is 64, and certainly not enough.
Well, if he got 2 Ura and was able to get the 24K, he'd be
but he'd have to declare the Ricci, and he'd have to find the 1 pin. And
he'd have to find the 1 pin specifically from Erik,
who's not going to deal it at this point, right? Because he's bailing. He's bailing from turn 1,
right? So I mean, yeah, it's a.
It would have to be Ricci Sumo Chitoi Door 4, and that might have done it, but unfortunately, with the 1 pin's dead, that's not going to happen, and this game is now pretty much locked up.
Someone could deal in just for fun.
Eat.
You've never done that before, Edwin? Just been like, yeah, you know what? Screw it.
Well, okay, for fun, yes, because of the Rochester tournament, somebody decided to deal into my Sononko or something like that. But yeah, like in this particular case, no. And there you go. Corak does get his first, but it's not nearly enough. It is enough to take over second place, but our champion of the Beta League goes to Erik out of Pool A, which is a pool that you came out of, right?
It is indeed. So I'm happy to see Erik win. Having played against him, playing Mahjong against somebody really makes you want to see them succeed in the future. He ended up with a plus 54.7, 1 first in 3 seconds. Just very solid, consistent play got him the first in this league championship. So congratulations to Erik for being our first ever ARML champion.
Yep, our first seasonal champion. He's now eligible at the end of the year to compete for the end of year championship. All 4 of them obviously are going to move on into the A1 league, the top league of the ARML. So, you know, again, nothing to sneeze at between any of these 4 players. They'll have a chance, all 4 of them, next quarter in the spring season to compete for the spring title. So, you know, all is not lost for any of them at this point. But yeah, no, it's definitely a fun 4 games to watch. I don't know about you, but I hope everybody else, everybody out here watching, also got a chance to enjoy these 4 games. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts here?
No, I'm just very excited to see how these 4 players, especially in A1, because I'm sure all of the A1 games are going to be electric for all 13 weeks of the next session. But I'm quite excited to be watching how everyone develops in these next 12 weeks. As you said, like these games are going to make everybody better, and it's going to put us all up against some very stout competition. So I'm very excited as a player to be able to test myself against a bunch of people and to learn from a bunch of people, and I'm even more excited as someone with the very lucky opportunity to commentate these games to just see what everybody's able to put out. I am sure we're going to have a lot more excitement in the future.
Yeah, and like I said before, this is our inaugural broadcast. This was something that we eventually hope to have, and as the season progressed and people were kind of inquiring as to whether or not we'd have something like this, we decided we wanted to try to put something together here for the Beta League Championship at least. The goal, hopefully, going forward will be to broadcast matches throughout the spring season as availability allows, because as the way the league is structured, people have lives and things to do, and so we'll definitely try to put as much as we can out on the schedule. It won't even just be the A1 league; it'll be all 4 leagues: A1, A2, B1, B2, as we have a lot of good players and all of them, and it won't just be A1 where you'll see like competition like this. You'll definitely see games in B2 and B1 and everything else where there's certainly a lot to be excited for and to learn from as well. So hopefully we'll have more of these going forward. Again, it'll all depend on availability, but we hope that you guys will join us in future broadcasts. Oh, and there's our small little virtual trophy there for Erik as the Beta League champion.
That's a really fun shape. Is it in it's got 8 sides, right? Surely.
Why are you asking? I'm a math guy too, but you're a math teacher. You know that. Why are you asking me?
I mean, it just looks weird. It looks like it has 9 sides. I just want to know where this trophy was found. I now want a 9-sided trophy shape just like that. We're gonna have to work really hard to catch up. But congratulations to Erik. You've earned a beautiful geometric feat as your championship trophy here.
Let's see. I don't know. I think we'll probably have to leave this for now. Unfortunately, we didn't actually plan anything on interviews on the schedule beforehand, but maybe we'll have that on the blog going forward.
Also would have been easier if it wasn't a weeknight. I know I at least need to get to bed pretty soon if I'm going to have any hope of interacting with high schoolers tomorrow. So
that's true. It is 9 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time and 12 a.m. on the East Coast. So actually, at this point, we probably just want to thank everybody for, if you've stuck around for this long, for watching our broadcast. Like I said, we hope to have more during the spring quarter. Again, you can check us out on AmericanRichi.org for information about the league. And if you are interested and you want to sign up for the spring season, there's still time. And I guess that really much covers it. Unless you have any other parting words, Tucker?
no, that's all I've got. Thank you all for coming out. Edwin, it was a blast commentating with you, and I'm really looking forward to the future here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope so as well. And like I said, it's just the beginning of the journey. So I hope that there's a lot more excitement and success for people along the way. So with that being said, again, it's rather late. Thank you all for watching. I am Edwin.
I'm Tucker.
And thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again hopefully really soon. Thank you.